Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining me. My name is Matt Robinson, the Gregarious Hermit, and today I want to read you my book that I wrote a few years ago now. It's called Understanding Happiness, the Pocket Companion Workbook. And over the years since I published it, I've had a lot of feedback and a lot of really great comments. And I feel like the information needs to be out there and more available to more people. So I'm going to read through the book with you today, but I'm also going to add lots of extra little insights and things that have revealed themselves to me since I wrote the book. And there's a lot of really good tips in there to help people that might be struggling with life and trying to find their purpose. This book will help explain why our modern society forces your mind to look for the negative rather than looking for the positive. So let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Understanding Happiness, the Pocket Companion Workbook, written and narrated by Matt Robinson, the Gregarious Hermit. Have you ever wondered why your mind talks to you? Why it constantly judges the world, good or bad? Why it sometimes struggles with where you are in life compared to where it thinks you should be, or compared to where you were in the past? Why do you have the feeling that things should be different? This book takes a look at how our modern lifestyles and the hectic pace of life put a huge strain on our very primitive mind. It explores how our ancestral mind developed to keep us safe and how those simple, reactive processes get amped up by the constant stream of micro decisions we have to make in our world due to the overwhelming abundance of choice. Ever wish you could get a break from that voice in your head? When you can clearly see the simple mechanisms that trip us up each day, that cause us to get upset or angry, keep us wanting more, bigger, better, keep us feeling unfulfilled and unhappy, then you'll have a much easier time taking back control of your mind so you can use it like a tool when you need it, but shutting it off and enjoying the silence and the undeniable pleasure of being present when you don't. This book will teach you some simple techniques to rewire these processes to your advantage, to take back control of your mind and fill your life with a beautiful inner peace and joy that will transform your every action. Every aspect of your life and health will flourish. Now, that might sound like quite a big claim from such a small book. It's only 100 pages. But when you really understand the information and the concepts in this book, you'll find that you get so much more clarity over your life's goals, and just this peace that just rises and fills you with joy, no matter what's going on in the world around you. Introduction. During a particularly stressful time in Matt's life, running his own business, raising a young family, dealing with the loss of several relatives and friends in close succession, and the final straw being the news of his best friend being diagnosed with brain cancer, life just didn't seem to make much sense. As he struggled to find meaning from it all, his mind started to frantically search for an answer, getting louder and louder, thrashing in every direction looking for a solution, and questioning every decision he'd ever made. Finally, his mind simply quit when he experienced what's known as an ego death and was left with a completely silent mind. Nothing had physically changed about his life during the process. He still had a mortgage to pay, and his friend wasn't miraculously cured. But what was gone was that little voice in his head. No more stress, no drama, no sense of rising panic each morning, just pure peace and an overwhelming joy that pervaded his whole being. And more curiously, an indescribable knowing that everything was okay. The miraculous transformation was instantaneous. So when I first started to write this book, I thought it would be more beneficial to kind of steer away from some of the spiritual side of what had happened to me and get straight into more of the psychology about how our minds developed and how our minds respond to the world around us. But I really want to point out that the space that I found myself in, I was so unbelievably stressed at the time. I was an insomniac, and the news of my best friend being diagnosed with cancer It just was so overwhelming, and I was just kinda really desperate at the time. I was trying to solve my financial struggles, and, that news of my friend was just literally the last straw. And so I lay down on the living room carpet late at night, just staring up at the ceiling fan, and my mind got louder and louder, and it started to question everything, like, why did I come to the States? Why did I quit my engineering job? Why did I get married? Why did I have kids? All of these thoughts were just spinning and spiraling through my head, and my mind was getting really nasty because it couldn't find a reason for why I was in the situation I was. And it couldn't find a solution that would just easily lift me out of that depth of despair. And so it literally quit. But as I was laying there and my mind was just getting louder and louder and louder, I felt this strange energy at the base of my spine. And it grabbed all of my attention because it was so pronounced. And I do remember thinking, well, that's the last thing I need now. I've got some medical condition on top of all of my stress and everything else that's going on in my life. And this energy seemed to grow stronger and stronger. And I slowly started to feel it rising up my spine. And at some point, I just had this overwhelming urge to just put my fingers like that. And as soon as my fingertips touched, that surge of energy shot right up my spine into my head and just propelled me into this space that was so sublime and serene. And I was floating without a body, just amazed by the beauty of everything that was there. And there were no objects or things to look at. I wouldn't describe it as what people think of as heaven, but I was just in this wonderful place that my entire being was just full of love and peace. And there was this knowing that everything was going to be okay. And just having that relief and that release from the stress and the pressure and the burden that I'd been feeling was just so amazing. It was like, being wrapped in a warm blanket and just feeling such intense love. Every single cell in my body was just peaceful and tranquil. And when I came back to the room and my awareness came back and I saw the ceiling fan again, that peace was still there and my mind was completely silent. And I actually slept so well that night. I'd been an insomniac for many years at that point, but just that complete release of all of the stress and the burden, I just fell right to sleep and just had an amazing night's sleep. Without his mind constantly distracting him or telling him stories, there was no longer any debilitating procrastination, no overthinking things, no worrying about the future or what people might think. Just doing what needed to be done without any hesitation, and all while being blissfully happy. The honeymoon didn't last forever, though. After a few years, his mind slowly started talking again, only this time he was a witness to the voice in his head, like watching someone else speak. This brought about almost daily revelations, new understanding and clarity about what his mind was doing and why it was having the conversations it did. Matt doesn't claim any credit for the theory that came out of this experience. He didn't sit at his desk pondering what was going on for weeks on end, because the theory came to him completely out of the blue in an instant. Seemingly, like all great eureka moments, it was a gift from the universe. So that's one of the things since my awakening is that you'll very often realize that really great ideas, engineers, scientists throughout our history all have these amazing ideas and thoughts that just come to them instantly. They may be struggling to solve a problem, something that might be pretty complex, but the solution just comes in an instant, usually when they're not even thinking about the problem they're trying to solve. And if you actually allow that mechanism to work in real life, just ask questions and then just wait for the answer, you'll find that the universe gives you everything that you need. But finding the words to convey his experience was difficult and took time. This book represents his efforts to clarify and simplify his theory into as few words as possible in order to teach people what he discovered in a simple format. It explores his theory on the purpose of the mind and why it talks to us, as well as the three most important techniques he teaches to observe this process within yourself so that you can understand what your mind is doing, as well as give you the tools to change these default behaviors and replace them with something much better. The lessons are beneficial to everyone, but are particularly useful to anyone who is overwhelmed with life, dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, or anger. Pretty much any negative emotion can be seen in a different light using the knowledge and techniques presented in this workbook. It contains enough information to understand what your mind is doing without getting bogged down in the details. It also gives you the tools to observe the behavior and make simple changes to your life to actively take back control of your mind. You'll also find useful worksheets so you can start to recognize habits and default reactions that are holding you back, as well as suggested daily routines to help you easily incorporate the lessons into your everyday life. It's the perfect pocket companion and can be read daily for inspiration and motivation. Your mind gets in the way of your happiness. Our minds seem to be incredibly noisy these days. They constantly talk to us and tell us stories. They seem to judge and criticize the world around us and tell us how things should be different. They blame other people. They get jealous. They worry about the future. They get stressed and anxious. We rush from one activity to the next and think about what we're going to be doing rather than enjoying what we're doing right now. Our minds seem to try their very best to make us unhappy. But I do want to stress and emphasize that point that it's your mind that creates all of the drama in your life. And I hope that what I read in the next few pages will help emphasize that and reveal that to you. Add to that all the stress we face from so many areas of life: work, school, bills, chores, aging relatives, taxes, health issues, financial insecurity, loneliness, climate change, wars, peer pressure, and loss. The list goes on. Society places such a burden on us. All you have to do is look at the rising statistics on depression and suicide, as well as the overall mental health crisis we seem to be facing since COVID. It seems pretty clear that our minds are struggling. Happiness seems to be further from our grasp, despite the abundance of things that promise to make our lives better. But why is that? I'd like to share with you a theory I have about the purpose of the mind and why it seems to talk to us. I also hope to convince you that almost all the conversations in your head are completely unnecessary and that it's perfectly safe to ignore them. After that, I'll teach you three simple techniques you can use to revolutionize your life and health, as well as silence most of the thoughts in your head. The easiest way for me to teach you how to be happy is for me to show you what makes you unhappy. All unhappiness is caused by just one simple thought: things should be different. Every time you get upset, angry, or annoyed, every time you feel frustrated, overwhelmed, sad, lonely, depressed, it was because of this notion that things should be different. You're annoyed because someone left dishes in the sink. You think things should be different. When you're irritated because you can't find a parking spot, or when someone cuts you off on the highway, you think things should be different. When you don't earn enough money, or when your boss is being mean, things should be different. When you feel lonely, things should be different. In fact, behind every negative emotion you've ever experienced was the feeling that things should be different. For a lot of people, simply recognizing and acknowledging that fact can be a big aha moment that is enough to bring some relief from the negative thinking. Spotting the underlying things should be different storyline can make dealing with issues much easier. And understanding why our minds developed that way helps us change this mechanism into one that creates happiness instead. So let's take a look at what's going on. Your body sends a constant stream of information to your brain from all your senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. And yet, we can only focus on a tiny portion of that information at any one time. If I'm staring at the wrinkles on the back of my hand, I lose awareness of my big toe. And if I'm trying to feel the blood pumping in my big toe, I lose awareness of the details of my hand, even if I'm still holding it right in front of my face. We've all experienced being in a room with a constant background sound, maybe an air conditioner or a fan. You seem to lose awareness of it and only notice it once it's turned off, even though the sound was there constantly. You decide what you want to focus on, and everything else drops out of your awareness. So essentially, what you focus on is like a spotlight that only covers a small area that you choose to pay attention to. You only notice other things if there's a sudden change in one of your other senses. This is where your mind comes in. While you're staring at the details of a tiny flower, your mind is monitoring all your other senses and looking for danger: a sudden sound, a flash of movement in your peripheral vision, something touching you. Your mind detects the change and alerts you to it. It's like your own personal bodyguard, monitoring your surroundings, looking for danger, while you focus on something else. So if a fly lands on the back of your neck, you get startled by the sudden change, and your attention immediately turns to the new sensation until you can figure out what just touched you. The same as if you were walking in the woods and you heard a branch snapping behind you. It immediately grabs your attention until you're sure it's a squirrel and not a bear. Our minds have evolved to keep us alive. That's their only purpose. Essentially, they're primitive survival computers that keep us safe by looking for danger and thinking of ways to improve our chances of survival. They do this by performing three very simple tasks. So before I jump in and explain what the three simple tasks are, just want you to become aware of how your mind perceives the world around you. So you can decide to focus on something, like right now I am focusing on the words on this page and I'm concentrating. But if something changes in the environment around me, a loud noise or maybe a flash of light that might indicate something moving in my periphery, or if get a sudden sensation, something touching me, something getting warm, that's where my mind will jump in and say, "Oh, something just changed," and it will re-grab my attention. But you can see that all the time. Even as your eyes wander around a new scene, you'll see that your eyes jump from thing to thing. It's not like a very smooth progression as your eyes look around the room. So just start to become aware of that your entire physiology is designed to keep you safe and keep you alive. Your mind monitors all of those sensations all the time, and only when it detects a change will it grab your attention. Other than that, you have control over your awareness, and that's important, and we'll get into that later on. All right, so let's get back to the book where I describe the three things that your mind does to keep you safe. But before we do that, I'm going to have another drink. Task 1: the list. Our minds keep a list of our experiences so we can avoid repeating bad things and steer us towards things that are good for us. Our minds look to the past to keep us out of trouble. Task number 2: problem solving. They solve problems by visualizing the future. This allows us to test out various scenarios that would improve our lives without exposing ourselves to risk. Our minds dream of a better future. Task 3: immediate threat avoidance. And the last thing they do is help us avoid immediate threats when we're confronted by something. What advantage do we have that we can use to escape or outsmart a predator? We hear a lot about artificial intelligence these days, and in many ways, our mind is like the original AI survival companion and personal alarm system, learning from our past experiences and using them to steer our future selves away from trouble. All three of those tasks that our mind performs are incredibly simple, and yet they've kept us safe and allowed us to evolve for hundreds of thousands of years. The only problem now is that those simple algorithms don't work so well in our complex modern society. Let's explore each one of those tasks in a little more detail so I can show you what I mean. So, you have to realize that our world has changed so dramatically over the last couple of hundred years, and certainly over the last couple of thousand years. But humans have existed on the planet for a couple of 100,000 years. I'm sure we were very, very primitive in the early days, but our minds evolve slowly. Now, we can do very, very complex things, but those basic mechanisms are still the same as they were hundreds of thousands of years ago, just very, very, very primitive survival computers. And it's almost like a base layer of survival that underlies our really amazing brains that we have these days, where we can solve complex problems and world issues. But the basic fundamental programming that forces you to look when you hear a noise or reactively move your hand away when something touches it, those mechanisms are so ingrained and so low level, they haven't changed for hundreds of thousands of years. But our complex modern landscape still forces those primitive processes to react the same way. When I reveal to you just how that affects your life, I want you to really, really take that to heart, because it can radically change your life. So let's look at the first thing that our mind does, the list. The first thing our mind does is it keeps a list of all the good and bad experiences we have. Basically, it's our own personal history book of things that we should avoid and things that are safe for us to do again. It's like a set of rules that we create for ourselves that keep us safe from harm. In our ancestral days, this meant keeping track of plants that were safe to eat and ones that would make us sick, animals that could be dangerous to us, and animals that were good sources of food and easy to catch. It would also keep a list of people or tribes to avoid and ones that we could trust. It kept a list of places that were good for hunting and foraging, as well as places that might be inherently dangerous, such as steep cliffs or where dangerous animals lived. You can think of this list in its most basic form as things we're attracted to and things we're afraid of, essentially love and fear. You would think that things are inherently good or bad, and so our lists should be identical, but you'd be wrong. So these lists are not common to every human being. They're all built on our own unique past. And so everybody's list is a little bit different. Now, of course, there will be a lot of common things on there, but we all have our own unique experiences that steer our current selves. Most of us think that kittens are cute and adorable, but if you happen to be one of the unlucky people that got mauled by a kitten when you were a toddler, then you'll view kittens very differently and with a lot of apprehension and fear. One group of people will have kittens on their good list, and the other group will have kittens on their bad list. So our lists are unique to our personal experience, and there's no inherent good or bad, only our arbitrary interpretation of an event from our own unique perspective. But once you've become afraid of kittens, it's almost impossible to move them into your good list. Once things are on the list, they're always on the list, and it takes a great deal of deliberate effort or a string of contrary experiences to move them from good to bad, or vice versa. This is why first impressions are so important, and also why childhood trauma can cause problems for people for the rest of their lives. And remember that this is all going on completely subconsciously. You're not actively curating your list of good and bad. Your mind is doing this for you in the background. So I'm drinking green tea with honey just to help keep my voice nice and warm. I don't speak an awful lot. My name is the Gregarious Hermit, and I actually spend a lot of time more as a hermit than I do as an outgoing person. So I don't speak for hours on end. So reading this book is going to be a good workout for my throat. But I definitely recommend green tea, a little bit of honey, just perfect to keep your throat nice and smooth. This primitive list still works the same way today, only now we have so many more things in our world to keep track of. that our lists have become really quite massive. Just look around your own living room at the volume and variety of things to identify and keep track of compared to what a forest or any other natural environment looks like. Of course, there are a lot of things in a forest, but they're all pretty much the same thing, just repeated over and over again. By contrast, the objects in our living room are so diverse and unique that our modern environment needs a lot more labels and categories to keep track of things. Nowadays, the list looks more like a giant filing cabinet rather than a spiral notebook. Look at a typical high street or grocery store. The variety of objects packed into our field of view is staggering, and every time we turn around, it's a whole new, bewildering array of objects that your mind has to analyze, identify, and then check to see if it's something we've encountered in the past and if it's a threat or not. Not that there are many threats in a supermarket, but our primitive mind still needs to check and make sure. Our senses get stimulated to the breaking point, and our mind is in overdrive. You just don't realize it because it's going on in the background. So you may notice sometimes that when you come back from the supermarket and you've finished your shopping, that you're just physically exhausted. And a big part of that is that mental exhaustion from identifying all of the different objects. And again, you don't notice it taking place, but your mind is in overdrive each time it identifies an object to see if it's a threat. The only way that our mind knows if a tiger is dangerous is if it's seen one before and it has that little catalog of it somewhere in the list. But you still have to look at every single package on the shelf to make sure that it's not a tiger. And so your mind works really hard. Our modern environments are so busy and so cluttered. And so when you get home at the end of the day, you just want to sit and relax because your brain is hurting and your head is hurting from just identifying all these things. But the biggest problem nowadays is that most of the things on our list don't even come from our own personal experience anymore. In our primitive ancestral days, there was a physical limit to how many things we could see and experience in our lifetime. We could only travel a certain distance by foot, and you had to physically encounter something yourself for you to become aware of it and for it to make it onto your list. Nowadays, from the moment you wake up and start scrolling through your newsfeed on your phone, you see so many things in the world that you may never experience directly. I know an awful lot about the pyramids, and yet I've never seen them in person. Before I finish my cup of coffee in the morning, I've already visited the Eiffel Tower, been to the Amazon jungle, learned about nuclear fusion, and seen the latest pictures from the James Webb Telescope. Before I finish my second cup of coffee, yes, I do drink 2 cups of coffee in the morning, I've been exposed to so much stuff and seen so much of the world that even Christopher Columbus would be jealous. Even though I don't experience those things myself in person, my primitive mind will still judge the things I see on TV and the internet and then put them neatly in my list as being good or bad for me. But more than that, it carefully ranks the things I experience compared to what I've seen previously, and then neatly organizes my list as a hierarchy. You do this so subconsciously that you don't even realize you're doing it. If I offer to give you these things with no strings attached, which would you prefer? A new TV or an old TV? A week in a luxury hotel or just 3 days? A clean car or a dirty car? Would you rather have $1 or $1 million? Now, of course, there are many factors that go into decision making based on your personal past experiences and preferences, but almost without exception, people always go with bigger over smaller, more versus less, rich rather than poor, clean rather than dirty. It seems that we're hardwired to instinctively prefer the perceived better option. Here's an example of how this hierarchy works in practice, and this is definitely a modern day example that you can all relate to. If I drink coffee from coffee shop A and it tastes good, I like it, and it doesn't make me sick, my mind will put it on my good list. Now, if I'm out with a friend and they say, let's go and get a coffee, but this time it's from a different coffee shop. You guessed it, coffee shop B. I know I like coffee. It's already on my good list, so I agree to go. Now, if I sip my coffee shop B coffee and feel like it's a better tasting coffee, then I'll put it higher up in my list than coffee shop A. And if in the future I have a choice between A or B, then coffee shop B will become my preferred coffee from now on because I put it higher in my list. However, if I can't find a coffee shop B, then I'll still drink a coffee from coffee shop A because it's already on my good list. Only now, I might grumble about it and say it's not as good as B, whereas previously it was my favorite. Here's the interesting thing though, the coffee from coffee shop B might not actually taste better, but you may think it does because you associate the experience with having a fun time with your friend while drinking the coffee. Or maybe you associate the experience with the status of the brand, not because the coffee is better. Your mind is feeling all those endorphins and other feel good hormones rushing through your body. That's how it knows something is good or bad for you, based on how your body chemistry changes. If you're having a good time with friends, or you get lots of compliments while wearing certain clothes, your mind will steer you towards similar clothes in the future, and even other people wearing similar clothes, all because of these chemical changes. And you may notice this yourself, but your wardrobe will start to take on a certain look as your chemistry driven list steers your life towards things that have made you feel good in the past. Your favorite foods, favorite restaurants, favorite people, locations, cars, hobbies, lifestyles, mannerisms, quirky habits. Pretty much anything in your life that you're attracted to and everything you'd rather avoid is neatly ranked on your list based on how your body was feeling at the time you experienced it. Your entire persona is built into this list too. How you identify yourself, all the characteristics that you think define who you are as a person, all appear as a label somewhere on this list. Your physical characteristics, male, female, young, old, tall, short, good looking, as well as mental characteristics, intelligent, good memory, funny, and social characteristics such as wealthy, refined, sophisticated. These are simply beliefs we have about ourselves that define who we are. Each of these characteristics is like a scale from best to worst, and how you view yourself determines where in your list you put it. That's how you can tell if someone is more refined than you or less refined than you, more intelligent than you or less intelligent than you. We're constantly using our list of experience to judge and compare the world around us. If I eat a pizza and it's not as good as the one I had last week, then my mind will tell me it's not as good simply because I have one higher up in my list of all time pizza experiences. It's not as good, but is it necessarily bad? So before we move on, I want to point out that this is very often why you always eat at the same restaurants. And if you're going on a road trip somewhere, how you'll often seek out those chain restaurants that you know are going to be good. Or at least you know there's one thing on the menu that you like. It's consistency and it's always the same. But our minds steer us towards something that we know is good, the same, rather than trying out something new. So you'll notice it especially when you're on a road trip. You always go to that same favorite chain restaurant. It's almost like you're afraid to go and try something new because what if it's not as good? Well, I know if I get that dish from that store, it's going to be about the same and I like it. So I always go there. But again, this is how your list steers your life without you even realizing it. And over time, it makes you afraid to try new things. And again, it's very subconscious. It's not like your mind says, "Oh, don't try that restaurant because it might not be as good." But you'll get these feelings that just always seem to steer you in the same direction. You always drive down the same roads every night. So now let's take a look at the second thing our mind does to keep us safe, problem solving. Before we do that, I'm going to take another little drink. And remember, hot tea with honey. Oh, it's so good. Problem solving. We're going to step back again to our ancestral past. Imagine I'm out hunting and foraging, and I see an apple tree covered with delicious apples. But the problem is that the tree is on the other side of a fast flowing river. How am I going to get across to the other side of the river to get those juicy apples? Well, I could swim across, but I might get washed away, and I would definitely get cold and wet. I could hop from rock to rock, but I might slip and get hurt. I could balance across a fallen tree. I could swing across on a vine. I could build a boat or a bridge. Or I could decide to walk further up the river to find a safer place to cross. I could even decide that the risk is just too great. In that one simple exercise, we visualized several ways to cross the river. We evaluated each one for risk, compared all of the options, so we can decide which one has the best chance of success with the least amount of effort and risk. All of which, without expending much energy or exposing our physical body to any danger. Essentially, daydreaming of the solution gives us the ability to visualize the future. That's what problem solving is. And in a physical situation like crossing the river, it's almost like augmented reality where we picture a virtual version of ourselves interacting with the real landscape before us. We don't have to figure out how to cross rivers anymore to do our shopping, but our ancestors didn't have many choices to make. They simply ate what they came across, so they literally tripped over their dinner. Nowadays, we make a million micro decisions in almost everything we do. What to cook for dinner, what time to eat, which supermarket to shop at, what type of apple, red, yellow, organic, local, pesticide free, artisan, individual, large bag, small bag. Each micro decision has a lot of options with various pros and cons. You might not think that deciding which shape of pasta and which brand to buy is difficult, but to our primitive mind, each decision is still a problem that needs solving. All these micro decisions, due to the abundance of choice, mean that our minds are constantly active. As a result, they have become really strong because we use them so much, but not in a good way. Strong in a way that means that they're always on, always looking for problems to solve, and talking to us constantly. Everything starts to look like a problem that needs solving. So there are lots of situations where there are just so many options available to us that we end up in this analysis paralysis where we'll very often just sit thinking about something instead of taking action. Now, of course, making sure that you make the right decision is good in a lot of circumstances. But if you find yourself overthinking things because of just the myriad of options and you end up just not doing the thing that you're thinking about, then I suggest that you as soon as you think that you're just thinking too much, oh my gosh, all this thinking, as soon as you think that you're thinking too much, or as soon as you notice that you're thinking too much, then just stop and just take action. Just start, just make an arbitrary decision and start going down that path. Very often we don't do things because we're almost afraid of getting started because what if we make the wrong decision? What if we do the wrong thing? But as soon as you notice that you're just overthinking things too much, then just make a decision and just start. Even if it's the wrong direction, at least you're heading in a direction, and then it might help you change course and take a different approach later on. Analysis paralysis is just because of this unbelievable abundance of choice that we have and a million different ways of doing things. So just stop doing that and just get started on something. Now, I just want to point out that problem solving allows us to do incredible things. We can design iPhones, create cars, and send people to the moon. But when we finish using our mind to do those things, we should be able to turn it off and put it back in the toolbox. But we no longer seem to be able to do that. Because it talks to us so much, we got so used to hearing its voice that it seems like it's the one in charge giving us orders instead of just being a useful tool that we use when we need it. So if you're paying close attention and reading between the lines there, you might see that I view the mind as being very separate from our body and in essence, who you are. The Buddhists believe that you are not the mind and you are not the body. And actually, if you follow the steps that I outline in this book and really understand the concepts that I'm talking about, you can actually observe that phenomena yourself and you'll be able to step back from your mind and just see it and view it as a tool so that you can literally use it when you want to, when you have a problem that needs solving. But then when you're not using it for that, you can literally just silence it and enjoy the world around you instead of getting distracted and moving your awareness to that voice in your head rather than putting your awareness in the real world. So many of us spend so much time. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced it yourself where you sit on the couch and you're watching TV, but then all of a sudden you're no longer even in the room. You're somewhere else doing something. It's like your awareness of the physical world just disappears completely and your focus is completely on the mind. Now, that is a problem, and our modern world drives us to that point. We should be able to remain focused in the physical world all the time and then use our mind when we want to. But we need to regain control of that awareness. So, on to the next chapter, the list and problem solving combined. Our list of experiences and our problem solving abilities don't operate in isolation. In our previous example, once I've successfully crossed the river, my mind will add the successful method to my good list. So the next time I come across the same or a similar scenario, I'll usually use the same solution again. It saves time, and more importantly, from an evolutionary point of view, it saves valuable resources as I don't have to fuel my hungry brain. If I use the method a few times in a row and it seems to work well, it will become an automatic default solution, and I probably won't even try to think of other ways of doing it unless there's a glaringly obvious better or easier way. Our primitive minds are quite lazy like this. Sorry, I mean efficient. If I yell at my kids one time to get their attention and it works, the chances are I will use the same tactic over and over again. If I'm much bigger than you are and I see that it gives me power over you, then I am more likely to use that tactic again. Enter the world of the bully. It becomes so baked into our subconscious and automatic that you'll often respond that way even if it's not necessary. Have you ever stubbed your toe and yelled out loud only to realize that it didn't actually hurt? Or have you ever seen someone overreacting to a situation and wondered, what's the big deal? Well, it's because they've used the technique so often that it's an automatic response, whether the situation warrants it or not. All the solutions you come up with form habits that you do without any thought. They get added to your list and actually become part of your identity. Just like being the guy that wears plaid shirts all the time, you're also the guy that's quiet, takes the same shortcut home from work, goes on the same type of vacations, hangs out with the same group of people, pours his cereal the same way, holds the door for people, and any number of character traits that at some point in the past worked for you. When you do things automatically without being conscious, it means you don't pay full attention to the physical world anymore. This gives you even more time to be absorbed in your mind. That's why you can drive for miles listening to the thoughts in your head without even noticing whether the traffic lights were green or not. And I'm sure you've all experienced that where you're driving down the road and all of a sudden it's like the road comes back into view and you're like, wow, I just went through an intersection and I have no idea if the light was green or red. You'll see that your body operates autonomously. So again, if you put your awareness on your mind, your body just seems to do these things all on its own. That's your chance to actually notice that. When you're driving along and you see that your body is just still doing its thing and you're not even really paying attention to it. When was the last time you actually thought about how to press the accelerator or how to press the brake? It just seems to happen on its own. You don't even give it any thought anymore. But you should try it the next time you drive. Just really pay attention to the feeling of the steering wheel in your hands or that action of pressing the pedals. Become really aware of it, and you'll see your body just doing that all on its own. And I think that's a part of why we get more forgetful as we get older, why our attention spans get shorter, and why our minds seem to grow noisier. We've done all the common tasks in our lives so often that we no longer even need to be present in our body. Being absent minded should really be called mind absorbed or mind obsessed or physically removed, but definitely not present. When we combine our list with our problem solving ability, this is where our modern lifestyles really wreak havoc with our mind. TV and the internet fill our lists with things that are way better than what we have currently, and lifestyles that are way better than ours. Bigger houses, better cars. Our friends are always on vacation according to Facebook. They're always having fun dinners with friends. They all have better jobs or more interesting hobbies. They appear happy. And this is where our notion that things should be different comes from. It's the daily exposure to so many potential life improvements. We want what we see because of our hardwired leaning towards better. When we compare our life to what we see on TV, it always seems like other people's lives are just better. And that makes us want those things too. That faster car will make me happy. That bigger house will make me happy. Our mind will look for a solution that will get us that lifestyle. It starts problem solving. But in reality, there isn't a problem to solve. So, this is something that you can see in almost every movie you watch. As the actors move through any of the houses that they're in, there's very little clutter. There's no dust on anything. All of the houses are pristine. Every lawn is perfectly manicured. Kitchen countertops are completely wiped down, tidy, all the dishes put away. There's never any mess. Everything is just perfect. And of course, when you live in a real house and you cook, you clean, you have equipment out on the countertops, and you know, a house is lived in. Things get put on the floor, things get left on couches. In the background, your mind is comparing your situation to that situation, and naturally it says, oh, that's better. But the problem is, though, that makes you unhappy with your current situation. We'll get more into that in a little bit. But again, I just want to point out almost every movie that you watch, just look at them. Everything is perfect. There's not a stitch of dust anywhere. And this next point is really important. But by thinking that getting something in the future will make us happy, that invariably makes us unhappy with what we have now. Essentially, you just deferred your happiness to the future. I'll be happy when I get a better job. I'll be happy when I get a faster car, a bigger house, a girlfriend, when I get married, when I get divorced. Things will always be better in the future when our mind daydreams of the possibilities. But that comes at the expense of being happy now. I'm going to repeat that again. Things will always be better in the future when our mind daydreams of the possibilities, but that comes at the expense of being happy now. Let's face it, nobody ever fantasized of ways to make their life worse. What can I do to make myself miserable? How can I make myself poor? I wonder if there's a pill I can take that will make me less attractive. How can I make myself lonely? Your mind wants better, not worse. But just take that to heart. When you think of a better future, there's a danger you might become unhappy with your present situation, even if your present situation is perfectly fine. In a primitive survival setting, wanting things that potentially improve your life also have the power to improve your chances of survival. So the mechanism that steers you towards improvement makes sense. But in our current surroundings, almost everything you look at is potentially better, but completely unnecessary for survival. And more importantly, completely unnecessary for happiness. So this simple mechanism doesn't make much sense anymore. It just creates unhappiness. So remember me earlier talking about my awakening experience and just that feeling of bliss, but the knowing that everything was okay. So in the years, the decade or so since my awakening experience, I've realized that our mind creates all the drama and makes us unhappy. And that feeling that everything is okay and just the natural joy that rises and the inner peace and bliss that is always there, it gets taken away by the thoughts that your mind has. When your mind is always struggling to, look to the future to improve your life, you actually miss that peace that is there right now and the happiness that is there right now. But whenever you're listening to your mind saying how unhappy you are, or how you wish you had this, you're jealous of your friend because they've got that, or how you deserve a pay rise, then whenever you're listening to that, you're actually not paying attention to that happiness and joy that is naturally there now. Everything is okay. But again, we'll get more into that in a little bit. In some people, this constant wanting actually leads to an uncontrollable shopping habit. It manifests as a physical problem. But in most people, it remains a deep seated and subconscious desire that leads to a general feeling of unhappiness. Whenever you see a better car on the highway, you don't automatically rush down to the dealership to buy something newer. But if whenever you see a better car, you're subconsciously reminded that you'd like a new car, but you can't afford one, then that's going to make you feel pretty bad. And the disparity between your car and theirs causes that things should be different feeling to emerge that makes your mind struggle. The longer you go without getting a newer car, the gap between what you have and what you want grows wider. This widening gap will change the stories your mind tells you. At first, it might be just that you can't afford a new car, but as the disparity grows larger and the feeling of potential judgment grows, that might turn into self criticism. I need a better job. I should have gone to school. What's wrong with me? This is definitely a rabbit hole that some people spiral into. Now, I know a lot of you will be listening to this and thinking, but Matt, I really do want to improve my situation. I do want a better house and a pay rise. That would make life so much easier. Isn't that why we go to school, in order to improve our situation? And isn't that why we go to the gym, to improve our health and physique? Isn't that why we set goals for ourselves? Yes, absolutely. Setting goals is fine. Striving to improve is fine. But being unhappy with your current situation serves no purpose whatsoever. Being unhappy does not move you towards your goal of a better lifestyle. I wouldn't have been able to write this book without having the goal of wanting to share my experience, but it didn't mean I had to be unhappy until I had finished. I could completely engage in the book writing process and find joy in every single moment, waking up early, writing for hours, feeling the sensation of the keys under my fingertips, and experiencing the words forming on the page were all part of the joy. Your happiness should not be contingent on some future event, goal, or object. There's no reason why you can't set goals, but still be happy right now while you work towards them. So I'm going to put the kettle on and make another cup of tea while I get ready for this next big chapter. All right, I am back. So this is not a product placement, but if you guys ever, I don't know, any of you out there that speak a lot and occasionally get a sore throat, this stuff is really good. Throat comfort yogi tea. So it's not a product placement or a recommendation. I'm not a herbalist or anything like that. And I'm not sponsored by these guys, but definitely recommend this if you have speaking engagements and you get a sore throat from time to time from doing that. Anyway, I upped my game. Okay, so on with the book. Now, actually, before I jump into this section, this is all about why your mind talks to you. And again, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a background in psychology, but I actually think that that gives me a bit of an advantage in this situation because I don't view the brain, the mind, the world from any place of like learning. I haven't been taught that this is how things are. So this is all my own opinion, and it seems to make a lot of sense to me and to other people that I talk to, including some psychologists too that have kind of agreed that this might be a good theory. But it would take a monumental shift in the world of psychology to make the change to actually viewing the mind from this perspective. But I think that we will get there at some point, and I hope that this actually helps transform a lot of mental health psychology therapies. Because to me, it seems pretty obvious and it seems to make a lot of sense. But of course, nobody in the world of psychology is gonna take my word for it because I don't have a degree in psychology. So anyway, maybe we can start a movement and get some more momentum going that way. Why your mind talks to you. Hopefully, it's clear to see that our primitive list of good and bad that's simply meant to keep us out of trouble has now become a list of wants and desires that promise to make our lives better. Our list is no longer our own, and instead is filled with an overwhelming array of objects and experiences driven by what we are exposed to through the internet and TV, and how our phenomenal problem solving abilities try to figure out ways to get what we want in the hopes that having those things will improve our lives and make us happy. But subconsciously, it's wanting those things that pushes your happiness off to the future and makes you unhappy now. So, wanting things to be different drives all of our struggles, but that doesn't explain why we actually talk to ourselves. I mean, it doesn't make sense from an evolutionary point of view. Our ancestors didn't have language, so they couldn't talk. We're not born understanding language, it's not an innate part of being human. Without language, you wouldn't have a voice in your head at all. And if you think about it, speaking is such a slow means of communicating ideas that it doesn't make sense that our mind would communicate with us that way. Try describing the Eiffel Tower to someone that's never seen it before. You have to explain so many abstract concepts, materials, colors, location, size, and yet I can show you a picture of the Eiffel Tower, and understanding it is almost instantaneous. Have you ever noticed how quickly your body reacts when an insect lands on your arm and startles you? Or when you hear a sudden noise behind you, your body reacts instinctively. Imagine if you had to wait for your mind to speak to you and say something like, "Whoa, what was that?" You should probably check to see what just tickled your neck. Or, "I wonder what just made that sound behind me. Maybe I should turn around and take a look." Even without any martial arts training, if somebody tried to punch me, my hand would instinctively move up to try to block the attack. No conversation in my head, no matter how clever, would stop me from getting punched in the face. Speaking is just too slow. Thank goodness our bodies react way faster than we could have a conversation with ourselves. We wouldn't survive long as a species otherwise. And think about this. If you're talking to yourself, surely you already know what you're going to say. So, one of the things that happened with my awakening experience was that I had a full year and up to, I'd say, almost 2 years with a completely silent mind, no voice in my head whatsoever. So, it seems very, very clear that your mind doesn't need to communicate with you that way. And it really doesn't make any sense. It's just such a slow means of communication. Whenever you hear that voice in your head, it's doing something else, which I'll get to in a minute. So, why then do we talk to ourselves? Well, actually, I don't think we do. Language is only needed to communicate ideas to somebody else. Remember the third survival mechanism I mentioned, avoiding immediate threats? Like, if you're confronted by a tiger in the jungle, you need to figure out what advantage you might have to avoid being eaten. When you first spot the tiger, you would freeze instantly and would quickly identify the tiger in your list. You've seen one before, you know it's dangerous because you saw your friend getting attacked by one a few years ago. You would look in your list to see if you already have a solution to defend yourself, and if not, you would jump into problem solving mode and look around your surroundings to see what tools or escape routes you have to avoid an attack, defend against an attack, or outsmart the tiger. What's your advantage? So, those are all three of those mechanisms working together. Looking into the list to see if you can identify the thing or see if you can identify the object, figure out if it's a threat, and then checking your list again to see if you already have a solution to defeat the tiger. And if you don't, then you jump into task number two, which is problem solving. What can I figure out from my immediate surroundings that might give me some kind of advantage? We no longer experience physical threats like we used to. Our world has shifted away from physical activity to mental activity. Muscle is no longer king of the jungle. Whoever has the strongest mind wins. So our minds have learned to fear other minds. And I'm going to say that again for emphasis, just so that it sinks in. Our minds have learned to fear other minds. From a very early age, we are judged and criticized. We take toys out of children's hands and tell them that they're playing with it wrong, or we get upset because they play with the box and not the expensive toy. You're doing it wrong. Don't do it like that. What's wrong with you? We judge each other based on our list. What we think is the right way of doing something based on our unique experience of the past. And in fact, all the conflicts and disagreements you've ever had are because your list disagreed with someone else's list. You thought things should be different, and you thought their list should be the same as yours. For some reason, we can't seem to see that someone else's arbitrary list based on their own unique life experiences might be different from our own. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. So, as a society, I think that we should really try harder to understand that other people's experiences shape their life. And just because somebody isn't good at something, it doesn't mean that they're any less than you are. They may be a genius at something else that you're not good at. But our minds just go around judging other people. And again, we'll get into why it does that in a little bit. But I think as a society as a whole, we need to be a little more forgiving of other people and don't always compare them to ourselves and always look for what our advantage is. My way of washing dishes is what I feel is the best way to do it. Some people are afraid of cats. You're not. I love hiking in the rain, but it's not for everyone. But it doesn't stop at childhood. Our schools constantly judge our academic abilities. Our parents judge our behavior. Society has rules we have to follow and a moral code that we're judged by. None of this is necessarily bad if we want to be functioning human beings living together in society, but it teaches us to judge, and more importantly, it teaches us to fear being judged. Yes, you should definitely stop a child from putting their hand on a hot stove or running towards a cliff. Those words would tumble out of your mouth without any hesitation and without a single thought entering your head. But there's no need to judge their quirky personality or their inherent abilities. Somebody that's bad at math might be an amazing artist or musician. Somebody that doesn't understand Excel spreadsheets might be a genius when it comes to fixing your car. Nobody is brilliant at everything, but we're all brilliant at something. And I think we need to try to help develop the skills, the inherent skills that people have, and have avenues for them to be successful in life just using those inherent skills that they possess. Instead of trying to force them to be one thing or another, let's actually find a way to figure out what is your natural ability and how can you use that to help humanity and other people. And I think society and the world would be a much healthier and happier place as a result. But stepping back again, your school grades are judged, your friends are judged, your appearance is judged, even the way you speak is judged, your job is judged, the type of car you drive is judged, your wealth and status are judged, your intelligence is judged, everything is judged. You're even judging this book right now, agreeing with some parts and making counter arguments with others. You're making assumptions about me based on your own set of rules. And social media has only made things worse by making it possible for people to say things that they would never dare say to somebody's face. They have given our innermost thoughts an outside voice. All I can say is that I'm so glad I'm not a teenager anymore, growing up with that pressure. And this is a very serious problem that I think we need to address. Give kids the tools to understand what their mind is doing rather than allowing them to get dragged into all of these conversations and, just feeling very depressed and down about themselves when really there isn't anything to be depressed about. Your mind is just comparing yourself to other people and the world around you. And as I pointed out earlier, Almost everything that you see on the internet or TV looks better than what you currently have now. It always looks like an improvement. But the downside to that is that it makes you unhappy with what you have now, where there may be nothing wrong with the circumstances that you're in at the moment, but your mind doesn't work like that. And I think we need to give kids the tools to see that behavior in themselves. So an example would be internet criticism. I'm putting these videos out there and people jump in the comments and say, what a crap video, or this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And there may be some psychologist jumping in there saying, this guy shouldn't be teaching this stuff because he's not got the credentials to do so. But I can get really upset with that. I could literally start shaking because, like, how dare they talk to me like that? That's crazy. They're insulting me. Or I can literally go, okay. They're just expressing themselves. So how you respond on the inside is it only affects you. If somebody says something mean to me, I can either get upset by it or I can just ignore it and let it go. But again, giving kids the skill to recognize that they have that power to ignore or accept and then change how they feel on the inside, I think is so important. And it's something that is so missing from school today and society in general. Because of this constant judgment and comparison, we fear judgment. So when you hear that voice in your head that you think is you talking to yourself, you're actually seeing your mind anticipate what someone might be thinking about you and exploring the best conversation to have to counter that judgment. So just like a squirrel will try to figure out the best direction to run to avoid a predator, we are constantly trying to anticipate what the other person is thinking so we can come up with a suitable response. That's why that voice in your head sounds like you, because it's visualizing what you would say during a confrontation. It's always looking for its advantage, and it will either feel superior to someone else and make a preemptive judgment of its own, or if it feels inferior, it will defend and justify what it's doing. Or if it can't come up with an adequate defense, it will think of some other unrelated criticism it can make. Driving is probably the best place to observe this behavior in action. So let's say that you're driving along and you see someone swerving around in their lane. According to your list, you have a rule that says swerving is bad. So your mind will spot the bad behavior and will say something like, look at that idiot, he's going to kill someone. You judge them according to your list and what you think is right and wrong, and you attack them. You feel you're a better driver, so your mind practices a conversation which essentially shows off your superiority. That's your advantage in this situation. If, however, you swerve in your lane for whatever reason, your mind will anticipate the judgment from the driver behind you and will quickly defend its actions and find an excuse. I was avoiding a pothole, or I've been driving for 12 hours straight. You'd be swerving all over the place too. You felt like you were being criticized and you defended your actions. But the reality is that your mind perceived a threat and you heard it rehearsing a defensive conversation with the other driver. In just the same way you would react if you startled a bear in the woods. How do I get away from the bear? What's my advantage? And a counterattack is when you really don't have a valid excuse. That might go something like this. So what if I swerved? At least I don't drive a beaten up piece of junk excuse for a car. You don't have a valid defense. So your only advantage is to find a weakness in your opponent. Your car is superior. So there you go. Boom. That's your advantage. And if you happen to be the one driving the beaten up piece of junk excuse for a car, you might hear your mind say, yeah, but your gigantic new car is so much worse for climate change. Just something completely unrelated, but still makes you feel superior in some way and gives you an advantage. But the point is, you're never talking to yourself. You're hearing your mind rehearse conversations with imaginary passengers or the other drivers around you. It's just figuring out what advantage you have. So, again, that's the point I really want to drive home. That when you hear that voice in your head and you see that it's reacting to the world around you. And driving is quite possibly the best example of this because you just talk to cars and other people around you all the time. You'll realize that your mind is just trying to figure out what its superiority is, what is its advantage. And, so drivers that are going faster than you on the highway, you're going to notice them because they're driving so differently. Your mind is going to call them out and say, they're an idiot, they're going to kill somebody. And if you see somebody driving really slowly on the highway, you come up behind them and you're like, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. He's going to kill somebody. But the fundamental thing is, they're just different than how you would drive. Like we all have our comfortable speed that we like to drive at on the highway. Anybody that's a lot faster than you, your mind will notice and it will criticize them because that makes you feel superior. And anybody that is driving slower than you, they're dangerous. You criticize them, that makes you feel superior. Anybody that drives the same as you or roughly the same as you do, you don't even notice them. Your mind doesn't perceive a threat. But again, it's just that fear of confrontation, fear of judgment. Your mind has conversations with people. I think you've all driven past a police car on the highway, and all of a sudden you hear a conversation in your head explaining why you were going too fast, or I'm sorry, I was rushing this, or I had no idea I was going so fast. But you have this conversation with a police officer that you're never going to have in real life. Your mind is just rehearsing conversations to have in case there's a confrontation. When you're driving alone, just ask yourself, who are you talking to? How does the conversation in your head change anything? There's literally no need for the conversation. When somebody cuts you off on the highway, just let it go. Any conversation in your head doesn't change what happened one little bit. All it does is poison your body as you release toxic chemicals in response to the negative emotion. One of the biggest sources of conversations in your mind is narrating your life as though you're explaining something to a friend. You're essentially demonstrating your expertise, your superiority, and justifying what you're doing. You're talking to an imaginary friend looking for validation that your list and your way of doing things is correct. But essentially, that still means that you're afraid that someone might not agree with you and be judging you for what you're doing or the way you're doing it. There are, of course, other types of conversations that run through your mind, and many legitimate reasons to have a narrative running through your head. Writing emails, preparing a presentation, writing a book, doing homework, preparing a legal argument where you need to explore different verbiage. Those are all perfectly fine conversations to have and are a good use of your mind. But the three types of conversations I identified, attacking, defending, or narrating, are completely unnecessary. They only serve to strengthen that part of your mind that compares, criticizes, and complains, and in turn reinforces your fear of judgment. They cause us to suffer. So again, I just want to emphasize that point that whenever you hear yourself attacking somebody, defending yourself, or even narrating your life, that it serves no purpose whatsoever. But what it does do is it strengthens and reinforces that ability to judge and compare yourself to the world around you. So whenever you catch yourself doing that, try to stop if you can, because you're only hurting yourself with the negative emotions and negative chemistry that go with that. You will often hear your mind strike up a conversation with someone as you approach them, even a simple hello as you see a coworker walking towards you, or as you approach the receptionist, you hear your mind rehearsing a greeting, an explanation as to why you're there. Now, I don't know about you, but I must have said hello thousands of times in my life. So why on earth would my mind need to keep practicing that trivial greeting? The only explanation that makes any sense to me is that your mind is afraid of saying something stupid and being judged. So it rehearses even the most mundane conversation ahead of time. It's like it's grabbing the greeting from my list of past experiences and practicing it to see if it's the correct solution to the potential problem that's walking towards me. It's using my past experience to solve a potential problem, and the potential problem is judgment. However, when you're in the middle of a real back and forth conversation with someone where you can't really predict what they will say, rarely does a conversation enter your head before you speak out loud. You don't have to say to people, wait a moment while I formulate a sentence in my mind before I speak the words out loud. The words just come out in real time. But that's when we say the wrong word, get tongue tied, or mispronounce words. And that's where the fear of judgment comes from. Some past discomfort from a prior conversation. Just think of all the clever conversations you've had with people in your head, but never got to say them out loud because as soon as you met with the person, the conversation went in a completely different direction. You're walking into a store to complain about how they double charged you for something. You have your whole backstory planned out, how it was their fault, how you deserve a refund. And as soon as you walk through the door, they say, I'm so glad you came back. I realized I overcharged you as soon as you left the store. All that planning completely wasted. You could have been daydreaming of kittens or puppies instead. It's like rehearsing a mini Broadway show that never happens. Your mind is just trying to figure out what your advantage is in the situation, only it seems to do it constantly. And because it does it constantly, or at least it does it so much, and it sounds like us because it's preparing conversations that we would say, then we tend to think that that voice in our head is who we are. But it isn't. It really isn't. You can just ignore those conversations completely. This simple fear of judgment drives an almost constant stream of unnecessary chatter in your mind, always strategizing the best conversation to have in case you have to defend yourself. And yet the words rarely leave your mouth. But get this for messed up. If you're having the conversation in your own head, fearing what someone else might be thinking about you, then you're essentially criticizing yourself. Now, just think about that for a moment. If you're predicting what someone might be thinking about you and having a conversation with yourself about it, then who is the one doing the judging? You are. You're judging yourself by imagining what the other person might be thinking about you. Your mind is using your own list, your own set of rules, your own standards and values against you. The truth is, you have no idea what other people are thinking. They could, in fact, be complimenting you, thinking you're really cool for dressing in retro clothing, whereas you're afraid they're going to think you're poor and can't afford anything new, or that you let your laundry go too long and now you're down to your last resort emergency clothes. If you didn't have a rule in your list that says you should dress a certain way, you wouldn't judge others for breaking that rule. And if you didn't criticize other people for breaking your rule, you wouldn't fear being criticized yourself. When you see what's going on, it should scare you how much control your mind has over you, but it should also make you realize that it's completely safe to ignore those conversations. They serve no purpose. Trust me on that one. Remember, I spent almost 2 years with a completely silent mind. So I know that we can survive quite happily and go through life without any conversation in our head whatsoever. Earlier, I mentioned that our persona is also part of our list, but I just want to share one final and very important observation about that when we link it with our fear of judgment. When we're faced with an imminent threat, we try to find our advantage in the situation. We all possess certain characteristics that we think give us an advantage. If I feel that my intelligence is my advantage over most other people, my head will be filled with conversations pointing out everything I see that I think is stupid. Each conversation is like a self affirmation of my superpower, but I will fear any situation that might make me look unintelligent. A wealthy person won't do anything that makes them look poor. A bodybuilder won't do anything that will make them look weak. So our superpower is also our biggest fear and becomes like a steel cage that limits what we can do. Superpowers become your primary tactic for judging the world. You'll see the same conversation used over and over again. It becomes your default attack, and it becomes self-reinforcing so that you do it without thinking. And understand this: whatever you think is your superpower, time will not be kind and will slowly take that away from you. So you better prepare yourself for the day that you're no longer smart, young, good looking, strong, or healthy. But your superpower doesn't always have to be a positive characteristic like intelligence, strength, or wealth. They can also be negative, like, I'm sicker than you are, I'm poorer than you are, I'm more depressed than you are. But it still works the same way, only instead of being used as an attack, it becomes a default defense, a neatly packaged justification for why your life is the way it is. And if you have a negative superpower, understand that it is holding you back. You won't move forward in life while ever you cling to the story. Each time you use it, you just reinforce it. How many times have you heard yourself say something like, I'm bad at math, or I'm not flexible, I can't do yoga, I have a terrible memory, or the classic one for me, I can't dance? By using those excuses, you prevent yourself from trying, all because of some mind driven insecurity or fear of looking stupid. All you're doing is allowing your own mind to set limits for you. Throat coat tea, really good. Definitely recommend it. If you have a hard time seeing the connection between self talk and fear, then maybe see it as the need to feel superior. Why else would you point out other people's flaws and spend so much time explaining your actions? Whatever conversation comes through your head, try speaking it out loud. You'll see quite clearly that your mind isn't ever talking to you. It's always talking to the people around you, real or imaginary. I walk around giving lectures and presentations to people based on things I see in the real world. My mind sees a teachable moment, and suddenly I'm transported from the high street I'm walking down to a crowded auditorium or a one on one phone call. The real world disappeared from view as I temporarily entered a virtual world created by my mind. I'm always rehearsing and practicing conversations with other people, but never talking to myself. Even self criticism, where you're calling yourself an idiot for spilling your coffee, I'm such an idiot. If you say it out loud, that comment is not meant for you. If you were with a friend, you would say it to them to ward off their attack. If you say it first, they don't have to. And even if there's no one there to see you spilling your coffee, you will still hear that criticism in your head because your mind is rehearsing a pre programmed default response. But my point is that it's your mind talking, not you. And when you start to ignore it, you'll find that you don't get wrapped up in the emotional turmoil it creates. Once you observe the nature of your mind, you'll want to learn how to stop it talking. Well, you're in luck because I have three very simple techniques that will put you on a path to a silent mind. You'll still be able to function in society, but you just won't have conversations in your head about who's to blame, how mean somebody is, how cool you are because you have the latest iPhone. Instead, you'll be filled with peace and a natural state of happiness that just rises when your mind stops judging. You won't be unhappy because your mind won't be comparing everything and telling you that you're not as successful, popular, rich, good looking, charismatic, stylish, athletic, or intelligent as someone else. You won't criticize yourself for not being better because you'll realize that you're perfect already. Remember, everything is okay. You'll even feel more compassion for others because you'll see very clearly that they're dealing with their own inner monologue and aren't on vacation every day living their best life with the person of their dreams. This is the most talking I've done in a long time. Let's see if we can get through this book in one shot. I told you it's a pretty short book, so I'm hoping we can make it. Where is the front there? So I'm hoping that we can make it in just one shot. Let's see. So, this next section of the book is full of tips and techniques that you can use to actually observe those phenomena that I've described in real life and see your mind actually doing those things. But the techniques will actually help you find that inner peace and just be able to let things go and stop looking to the future for happiness and instead experience happiness now. Just get rid of all of that drama from your life that your mind creates. You'll start to see those thoughts in your head of your mind struggling to find solutions for problems that don't even exist. You'll be able to identify true problems and problems that are just made by the mind. And there is a big difference. These techniques have been taught probably for thousands of years, or at least the first couple. The third one is talked about almost everywhere, and I see it in memes and on Facebook feeds all the time. But I don't think people necessarily realize the true impact and the power that it has. But I'm going to go through these three things and I'm going to transform your life. And again, that's a really big promise. But, if you follow the steps and follow the techniques and understand it, your life will be changed forever. All right. So, the big reset. So, hopefully, now you have a better appreciation for what your mind is doing when you think it's talking to you. And I want that to give you the confidence to realize that it's safe to ignore the conversations. I'm going to teach you some techniques to silence your mind so there isn't a voice in your head at all. If you feel nervous at the prospect of losing that constant companion in your head, I want to reassure you that you will still be able to function perfectly well. You'll still be able to use your mind when you want to, but then it will be silent when you're not using it. It will still alert you to danger with a little shot of adrenaline when you hear a branch snap unexpectedly behind you, or when you hear screeching tires when you're crossing the road. It'll still keep you safe. But the very first time somebody cuts you off on the highway and you simply have no thoughts about how stupid they were or how dangerous they were, and you realize that not a single thing changed about the physical encounter, you will literally feel such an endorphin rush and will probably laugh out loud because you've finally been released from the drama of your mind. So rest assured, you will be fine. You'll just have to deal with being happy and at peace all the time. The things I'm going to teach you have been taught for thousands of years, so there's nothing new in what I have to say. But maybe now, because of your new understanding of the mind, it will make more sense. And hopefully, that also gives you the motivation and determination to keep doing those things every day, even when your mind starts to protest. The three things I teach are mindfulness, meditation, and the simplest but most powerful one, unconditional love. So, if the thoughts in your head cause stress and unhappiness, how do we go about stopping them? Well, the first thing you have to do is simply notice them. Become aware of how noisy your mind is, notice how often it talks to you, and the types of comments it makes. Each time you catch a conversation in your head, see if it fits in with the theory I've outlined. Are you narrating your life? Are you judging something? Are you defending your actions? Just notice. You can write them down if you like and keep a running list so you'll be able to spot repetitive thoughts quite easily. Then, as you become more aware of your mind, we can turn to meditation, which is the formal way to observe the mind. So let's start there. This next chapter on meditation is not a guided meditation, even though you're probably listening to this or watching on YouTube, but it's the techniques and the foundation of and the essence of what meditation is all about. And there are some very, very simple things that I feel like people get wrong or they rush over. So, again, this is kind of a broad outline. If you go to my website, thegregarioushermit.com, I have lots of meditations on there, and I'm always trying to put new ones on there. I have some pretty creative ideas that will help kind of mess with your mind a little bit and maybe get you over into that more spiritual side of meditation. But there are lots, thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of meditations on YouTube if you just go there if you want a guided meditation. But this chapter on meditation is really kind of an overview and uh, just the basics that a lot of people seem to get wrong because they rush and they want to do battle with their mind. but even just the most basic level of meditation has tremendous health benefits. So I want you to really kind of focus on the key things that I'm talking about in this. But again, this is not a guided meditation, but just an overview of how meditation works with this system and allows you to recognize those characteristics that I've outlined already. Of course, there's a train going by. In case you don't realize, I'm not living in like a multi-million dollar home here. I live in a pretty noisy neighborhood with a main street just up there, and there's a train track at the bottom of the hill, and planes fly over to Newark Airport all the time. So actually a pretty noisy living room. So I do have to be a little patient sometimes and just wait. Again, I don't get angry with those things because I can't control the plane. I can't control the train blowing its horn. It's just going to do its thing. All I can do is just wait until it's gone quiet, and then I can start reading again. But again, I could really beat myself up and get angry and say, I need a bigger house, I need a studio, I need a soundproof room, or I need to live nowhere near railroad tracks. But that doesn't help me. It doesn't solve any problems. All it does is make my mind judge the world more, and it spoils my inner peace. So anyway, I think the train has gone now. Let's go on with the book. Meditation. A lot of people have tried meditation at some point in their lives, but few seem to be able to stick with it for long or incorporate it into their lives as a daily practice. That's the reason why I think it's important to understand what your mind is doing, because so many of us have experienced periods of stress that we sought a way to get some relief. We heard that meditation would solve all our problems, but it didn't seem to work, or it was hard, and so we simply quit. But the reason why we quit was because our minds started to tell us that we were no good at it, or that it wasn't working, or that there was something better on TV. So, ironically, the thing that we were trying to get some relief from is the very thing that encouraged us to give up trying. Now, this is where people often go wrong with meditation. They expect to be able to sit down in a quiet space and have their mind go completely silent, like turning off a light switch. But that rarely happens at first, and that's why people get frustrated. Meditation is actually meant to train you how to focus so you can observe your mind in action and understand how it works. If you sit in a quiet space in a very relaxed and comfortable posture, you effectively remove all the physical distractions from your experience. The only thing that remains should be your mind. So the only thing to notice and be aware of is what your mind is doing. So that's why, very often, when you first start meditating, it can seem like your mind is getting noisier instead of quieter. But in reality, you're just noticing how noisy your mind is because now you've given it your full attention. With meditation, we need to focus on a simple, repetitive task that allows us to notice when our mind wanders off into a story. There are many different types of meditation to choose from, but I'm going to teach you a simple breathing meditation that works well for most people. It's important to note that you shouldn't have any agenda or goals for your meditation. If you go into it expecting a certain experience, then you can be certain that it won't happen simply because you just gave control back to your mind. Whatever happens in meditation is whatever happens. Each meditation will be different. Some will be frustrating, some will be blissful, but you cannot force a certain outcome. You're just wanting again, and that's the domain of the mind. To be successful with meditation, we need to remove as many physical distractions as possible. Remember, our mind reacts to changes in our senses, so this means finding a calm place without any sudden noises and away from sources of light that change. Even with your eyes closed, you'll see changes in light. So if there is any movement in the room, flickering lights, blinking LEDs, or moving shadows from cars or trees outside, then that's not going to work. The space should be a comfortable temperature, not too drafty. There shouldn't be any strong smells. Clothing should be loose and comfortable, and you shouldn't have a full belly, nor should your stomach be growling. You should sit in a very comfortable posture. Sitting cross legged on the floor in the classic lotus position is ideal. But if, like me, you were brought up sitting on chairs and comfortable couches, then sitting in lotus position is the exact opposite of relaxing. You should be comfortable without any pressure points, but not so comfortable that you fall asleep. I recommend a simple high backed chair, like a typical dining room chair. Add cushions to the floor or to the seat so that your knees and hips form right angles. This allows your muscles to relax fully while keeping your spine straight, but not leaning against the backrest. Just sit with your hands resting gently on your thighs with your palms face down. It creates a slight triangle to help support your posture and keep you stable. Now, gently close your eyes. I always start with 3 deep breaths. This is a bit of a ritual, but your mind will get used to it, and it acts as a signal to your mind that you're about to meditate. It just helps speed up the process. Sit nice and relaxed. Breathe in through your nose and fill your lungs as deeply as you can, and then exhale slowly through your mouth. And just allow your body to relax with each out breath. Let the muscles soften. Do this 3 times before settling into your regular breathing pattern. Just whatever is comfortable and natural. Your mouth should be gently closed, but keep your jaw loose. Now we're going to spend a few moments scanning our body, looking for any tight muscles. We need to relax every muscle completely, which is why it's so important to sit as straight as possible, so your spine is like a balanced stack of pebbles that requires no muscle power to stop it from toppling. Starting with your toes, just check for tightness and relax them. Working your way up to your feet and ankles, now move your awareness to your lower legs. As you find a tight muscle, picture it melting like butter and just relax. Keep breathing gently with your mouth closed as you move your awareness to your thighs, then your lower back, spending a few moments in each spot to make sure everything is relaxed and let the tension go. Adjust your posture as needed. Now keep moving upwards. Relax your chest and your shoulders. Let your arms hang loosely with no tension in the hands. And let's just visit the shoulders again. There's always a lot of tension there. So pay close attention and relax these muscles completely. The same with your neck and your jaw. Our minds seem to tense these muscles tremendously when we think, so relax them. Keep your mouth closed and breathe through your nose while letting your jaw hang loose. Now become aware of your face. Check for tension around the eyes and the forehead. Make sure you're not squinting or frowning, and simply allow the muscles to relax with each out breath. By now, your body should be really relaxed, but just double check your shoulders, neck, and jaw one more time before we start. So while you're just sitting with a fully relaxed body, breathing gently, I just want to point out that in that one simple exercise, you have achieved most of the physical health benefits from meditation. By relaxing your body, you've told your mind that you feel safe, your blood vessels have opened up, your heart rate and breathing have slowed, and your body is releasing wonderful hormones that promote healing and good health. Relaxing the muscles releases all the built up stress and tension you accumulated throughout the day. If that's all you achieved through meditation, you already have improved your life in a big way. Now, I really want to stress this next point because it is so critical. A lot of people forget to do this relaxation phase and instead want to jump right into watching their mind. But if you fail to remove all the distractions from your environment or skip this relaxation step, you will literally spend your entire meditation with your mind exploring the sounds in the room or the aches and pains in your body. So it is critical that you spend that time and relax every single muscle. The more you can relax your body and get your posture so that you don't require any muscles to sit there, then you remove all of those physical distractions from inside your body. Your meditations will become so much deeper, and you'll be able to get into these wonderful, blissful states where you'll be able to pay more attention to your mind. And the more blissful you make your body, your mind actually calms down too, because your mind feels safe. When you calm down and relax your body like that, you're literally telling your mind that you feel safe and it doesn't need to worry about anything. Now continue to sit like this and move your awareness to your breathing. Your breathing happens whether you think about it or not, and it should be the one remaining part of your body that produces any sensations of movement. So this gives you a single physical sensation to focus on and makes it easier to notice when your mind has wandered. You're just going to observe the sensation of the air moving through your nose or in your throat. You can even watch the movement of your stomach or your chest moving up and down gently. Choose whichever seems easier for you, but watch each breath as though you were watching someone else breathe. Become fascinated with the tiny sensations of the air moving or the gentle, repetitive muscle movements. What I want you to notice and pay attention to is a stillness that exists right at the top of each breath, that fleeting transition between breathing in and breathing out. There's a momentary pause, just like when you're wafting a bedsheet in the air to get it to settle on the bed. There's a moment where it just seems to hang motionless in the air before it starts to gently float down to the bed. Your breathing does the same thing too. Without holding your breath, just notice that little bit of stillness at the top of your breath and keep staring at it for as long as you can. That's all you have to do. As you slowly drift deeper into relaxation and your breathing slows down even more, that stillness will seem to grow. This allows you to remain floating in that oasis of absolute nothingness for extended periods. Sometimes it will feel like you stopped breathing altogether as time itself seems to cease. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? And it is, except for that pesky voice in your head that seems to keep dragging you off on side quests, reminding you of all the stuff you have to do tomorrow, reminding you how rude the guy was at the supermarket that bumped into you with the cart without apologizing, or the guy that almost killed you on the morning commute. Now you really get to see how noisy your mind is and how easily you get distracted from focusing on your breathing. But this is the most important thing to remember. You are in charge, and for right now, you want to focus on your breathing. Tomorrow doesn't matter. Yesterday doesn't matter. Just right now, breathing is all that matters. When you sit down to meditate, you allocate a certain amount of time to do that task. So whether you sit down to meditate for 10 minutes, you've already said, I'm okay to meditate for 10 minutes. So all of those other thoughts that come into your head doesn't matter. They're not urgent. They're not important. You can deal with them after you finish meditating. Just keep reminding yourself of that. Every time those thoughts come into your head, just go right back to noticing that little bit of stillness as you breathe. And in the book, I talk about the stillness at the top of the breath, like a bedsheet hanging in the air. But at the bottom of the breath, there's also a stillness that you may find it easier to observe and pay attention to that. And it actually brings you more into the core of your body. So, since I wrote this book, I've actually realized that in some instances, it's better to focus on the bottom of the breath. You feel as though you can actually just maintain that stillness for longer at the bottom of the breath. So, just try that instead and see what you think. Maybe you can leave a comment and let me know whether noticing the stillness at the top of the breath or noticing at the bottom of the breath is better and which works better for you. So for right now, just breathing, that's all that matters. Each time you hear that voice in your head and get dragged into a story, just notice the conversation and gently bring your awareness back to your breathing. Sometimes your mind might drag you into a daydream for minutes at a time, but that's okay. Just come back to the stillness on the very last breath. As you get more proficient, you'll catch the stories much sooner, but it does take practice and patience. But again, each time you get distracted, Just gently bring your awareness back to that tiny stillness at the top of each breath or at the bottom. No drama. Don't get upset with yourself. There's no need to comment and tell yourself how bad you are. That's just another story your mind is trying to drag you into. So now you're meditating. Keep doing this for as long as feels comfortable. As you wrap up your meditation, and before you open your eyes, slowly bring your awareness back to your body. Feel the seat pressing into the back of your legs. Feel the weight of your hands in your lap. Start to become aware of the sounds in the room around you. And then when you're ready, slowly open your eyes again. Hopefully, you felt a little bit of calm within you. That inner peace is with you always, but the real trick is to bring that back into the room when you open your eyes and carry that for as long as you can throughout the day. And again, I want to emphasize that point. So, if you meditate for 10 minutes, you may generate 10 minutes of stillness and peace. But if you can actually maintain that as you open your eyes and come on back into the room, then you actually extend that peace and that bliss and just get up slowly and start to walk around and just see if you can maintain that stillness. So that's meditation. Hopefully, one day you can experience the bliss of your body disappearing and the stillness of your mind falling asleep. Let's just say that's when the fun stuff begins. So again, I was a little hesitant about making this a book about spirituality, but I really do see the power of those experiences that you can have during meditation. I really hope you get to experience something because it will forever change how you perceive the world and how you perceive your body in this world and the existence. So again, I wanted to stay away from spirituality, but now I feel much more comfortable talking about that stuff. So, again, I hope that this meditation just opens up a whole new world and a whole new perspective for you that will radically change your life. But don't get upset if you don't experience that right away. Your mind has had lots of practice distracting you. And as I said, if you only do the physical relaxation part, you will revolutionize your health. Ideally, you should meditate twice a day, in the morning and evening. Most people who teach meditation say about 20 minutes is ideal, but I say as long as you're meditating properly and don't get upset that your mind isn't silent, then even a single minute is great. If you want to do more, go for it. It's whatever fits in with your busy schedule and your lifestyle. And if you don't want to sit and meditate formally, then just turn off the TV, put down your phone, and just sit for a few minutes in a quiet room. Give your mind a break. So that's meditation. There are literally hundreds or thousands to choose from online, and they all work differently. So find one that works for you, something that speaks to you. I mean, every human being on the planet is unique, and we respond to our senses in different ways. So if you find that that meditation that I just described really doesn't work for you, it doesn't do anything, then go online and look for a different type of meditation. So the next chapter is mindfulness, which is something that I love because you can do it 24 hours a day, or at least during your waking hours anyway. But before we jump into that, I'm going to make myself another cup of tea and I'm going to observe the water filling the kettle and listen to the sound as the kettle boils. And I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, everybody. So I really hope you're finding this useful. I'm actually enjoying reading this book because it is a long time since I read it myself. And it's, I don't know, it feels like I'm listening to someone else speak. I guess it was a former version of myself, but I just love how the words are resonating and the message. It's very interesting to actually do that. And again, it's like I am listening to somebody else's book. It's really fascinating. That's like one of the skills that you can develop with this when you practice mindfulness, which is the section that we're going to talk about next. Completely and absorb yourself in the physical world, you'll actually see that your body just operates autonomously. You can watch with complete fascination as your hands do things. And, you just get mesmerized by it. And you'll see that there is a definite disconnect between the you who you are, the spiritual you, and this physical body. And so you can literally take a step back and just observe it operating. And that is, maybe that's not the goal of mindfulness for a lot of people. They just want to get that little break from the mind. But it helps put both the mind and the body in perspective, that you can observe them as separate things that are not who you are, but they are just tools that you're able to use. So, all right, that's where we're going to go with this next section. All right, mindfulness. People can get frustrated with meditation because they long for that infinite bliss that the experts talk about, but it seems so hard to reach. No matter how hard they try, they never seem to experience a completely silent mind. That's why most people quit after a while, not realizing that meditation isn't intended to silence your mind, only to allow you to observe it as it tries constantly to distract you. Meditation is about focus, regaining control of your awareness, and noticing your mind. Silencing the mind is where mindfulness comes in. And unlike meditation, you can practice mindfulness 24 hours a day, or at least during your waking hours. Mindfulness is quite simply moving your awareness away from your mind and back into the physical world where it should be. All physical activity happens in the present moment, whereas the mind likes to live in the past or future. So if we can remain focused on the present moment, we take back control of our awareness and thus our mind. We find the on-off switch by looking elsewhere. So again, I just want to point out that by focusing so intently on the physical world and the physical actions, you will actually be able to silence your mind. All you're really doing is controlling your awareness, which is literally just like a telescope or a microscope, that it only sees what you point it at. And very often our mind jumps in with an emergency, something to worry about. And so our awareness goes towards the mind. With mindfulness, we bring that awareness right back to the physical world and the present moment. And your mind, you no longer see it, it goes silent. We aim to become so intensely focused on what we're doing that we no longer notice our mind. And when I say intense focus, I mean like the kind of focus you get when you're woken up in the middle of the night by a strange sound, how you hold your breath and daren't move a muscle while you put every ounce of focus into listening for that sound again. The one thing that I see people get wrong when learning mindfulness is that they try to incorporate it into their entire lives in one go. They say, I'm going to go to the supermarket and do my shopping mindfully, or I'm going to cook dinner mindfully. But the problem with doing that is that there are simply too many distractions coming into your senses from all directions. So it's far too easy to forget what you're supposed to be doing and get dragged into a story in your head instead. The best way to learn mindfulness is to do it deliberately for short periods of time and focus on something small, something you can hold in your hand like a flower, a pebble, or a pencil sharpener. Then, once you've learned how to do that, it's much easier to incorporate it into your everyday life. Time for another little tea with honey. There's something really nice with tea when you allow the hot water to just hit the back of your throat, and it feels so soothing. If I showed you a tennis ball, you wouldn't have any trouble identifying it. It's most likely already in your list of objects you've encountered in the past. But the problem with how our mind works is that it sees things, identifies them, makes sure it's non threatening, and then it moves on to identifying the next thing. Essentially, we look but don't see. With mindfulness, we aim to override our mind's natural inclination to look and then move on. We're going to slow down, take our time, and pretend it's the first time we're seeing something. And I mean really slow down. Like if you were a praying mantis doing Tai Chi. This again signals to your mind that you feel safe, and so it slows down your heart rate and breathing. As you start to look at the tennis ball, you'll see that every single fiber on the surface is completely different. There aren't two fibers that are the same. They twist and turn in different directions. They reflect the light in different ways. The ball has darker shadows and brighter spots depending which way you hold it. Even the color isn't the same on the top compared to the bottom. It will pick up light reflected from your skin or trees or the sky that will change the color. But you don't see that unless you slow down and look closely. But as well as those visible characteristics, it also has texture, weight, smell, and presumably taste too. There are so many aspects of the ball that you can observe, and even when you think you've seen them all, slow down and look closer. What you'll notice is that as you stare at the ball, your mind will try to tell you that you have bills to pay, laundry to do, or emails to check. The urge to follow one of those conversations is really strong. It's a little bit like an itch that needs scratching, but each time you get that tickle, just jump right back to observing the tiny details. You'll notice periods with a silent mind almost immediately, but as you get better, your focus will become stronger and your mind will be silent for longer periods. If you're persistent, eventually it'll stop talking altogether. So, one thing I want to point out is that doing mindfulness this way, it's like any soccer player or football player, if you're from around the world, they only get good by practicing kicking the ball a certain way. So they do dribbling practice where they just, walk the ball around cones, or they shoot from the same spot over and over and over again, or they practice the same drill. Like skills and drills build the expertise. You don't get good just by playing a full game one after another. You get good by repetition of the small details. Mindfulness is the same. If you go and try to apply mindfulness to the whole world in one go, you're just going to forget that you're supposed to be doing it almost immediately because there are so many distractions and your mind will jump in. You won't even notice that it's gone. If you just set aside 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just pick up something small that you can hold in your hand and just observe every single tiny detail of that object. And then whenever your mind jumps in with a conversation, just go right back to observing the details. Just do that over and over and over again for 5 or 10 minutes. And then when you get really good at that after months, years, decades, however long it takes, then start to apply it to all aspects of your life. Now, you'll find that it's a little faster than meditation, where you're only devoting 10 minutes a day. This you can do all the time and in various aspects of your life. And you'll start to notice things that you probably saw a long time ago and you kind of forgot because your mind looks, but it doesn't see the things anymore. It doesn't see the details. I recommend doing this deliberate mindfulness for a few minutes at a time, periodically throughout the day. Each time you pick something up, there's an opportunity to practice mindfulness for a moment. Then, as you get better, try to incorporate it into all aspects of your life, getting dressed in the morning, doing dishes, driving, and especially while talking with other people. That little voice in your head will spend less time criticizing and complaining about things, and you'll find that there's a simple joy that rises. Even things that might have made you unhappy in the past, all of a sudden, you notice that you're doing them without grumbling because you're so absorbed in the tiny details and exquisite sensations. If you look at a black car, your mind will tell you it's a black car and want to move on to identify other things. But if you look closely and start to notice the reflections, the highlights, and the shadows, you'll realize that the car is anything but black. The roof will be blue from the sky. The lower part of the car might reflect green grass or the road. You'll see the surroundings reflected in the glass and the door panels. You're no longer just looking. Now you're seeing the world. So, this next section discusses the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. And I'm hoping that you are already starting to see the benefits of it. Don't just do these things because somebody says, oh, you should do it, it's good for you. Now, I hope that you can actually see the reason why these techniques work. They've been taught, again, for thousands of years, but I think unless you understand the connection with how it works to silence your mind and at least make you aware of what your mind is doing when it's trying to distract you, I think it makes these techniques much easier to learn and adopt and apply them to your life because you really do see the benefits of it. And I think it's a lot clearer than just doing it because somebody told you it's good for you. All right. So, the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. There are so many benefits to incorporating mindfulness and meditation into your life, but here are just a few examples of how those skills can really revolutionize your daily interactions and experiences. Eating mindfully is one of the most amazing experiences you can have. Food doesn't just end at the explosion of flavors in your mouth. You'll experience the whole journey as your body processes the food and releases the nutrients. You'll be able to tell instantly which foods are good for your body and which ones not so good. You'll also hear your body tell you when you've eaten enough. Each mouthful will be as exciting as the first. So again, that's one thing that you probably noticed. Like the first mouthful has so much flavor in it and taste, and then by the 10th mouthful, you don't even notice the flavors anymore. It's just like you're shoveling it in, and that's it. Your mind wandered on to other things. So just keep bringing that focus back to the textures and the flavors again, and you'll see that you can eat an entire meal and still maintain that same level and intensity of focus and just get that burst and explosion of flavors every single mouthful, not just the first few. Working mindfully. Suppose you work at a fast food restaurant and your boss asks you to mop the bathroom floor. Instead of a conversation in your head about how your life sucks, how your boss sucks, how Kevin the new guy should be mopping the floor, not you, how you can't wait for your shift to finish. Instead, you'll feel the weight of the mop, listen to the sound it makes as it squeaks across the floor. You'll marvel at the intricate patterns of the stains. You won't even know you're supposed to be unhappy. When you're stuck in traffic and you're running late for an interview, you won't sit there blaming the traffic for making you late. Instead, you'll marvel at the colors and reflections in the cars around you, be absorbed in the texture of the steering wheel. In both cases, you'll still arrive late for your appointment, but one way you'll arrive angry and complaining, while the other way you'll arrive relaxed and stress free. I know which person I'd prefer to hire. Workplace drama. You won't get upset with your coworker for always leaving the coffee pot empty. Instead, you'll enjoy the sensation of spooning out the coffee, enjoy the smell of the beans, notice the click as you turn the machine on, and listen to the symphony of sounds as the coffee is brewed. Procrastination. You'll no longer subconsciously fear not being able to do something. You'll no longer be daunted by the unknown. You won't need to seek out ways to avoid something you think might be difficult or uncomfortable because your mind won't be telling you any of those things. You won't avoid doing the work and you won't put it off until the last minute. Focus and concentration. Once you're done with procrastinating, uh and finally start with your unpleasant tasks, you'll be able to remain focused and concentrate for longer periods because of the time you spent meditating. You'll notice when your mind tries to drag you into a story, and with mindfulness, you'll experience all the tactile sensations of the task that keep you focused on the present moment rather than listening to your mind telling you how things should be different or how you'd rather be doing something else. Habits. Habits are things done repeatedly without thinking, but now your world looks like you're viewing everything for the first time. Life becomes fascinating, and you're no longer driven by your previous list of fears. You may drive down new roads, visit new places, try new hobbies. You'll become excited with life and will want to explore. Addiction. In no way do I want to oversimplify the subject of addiction or the seriousness. Addictions come in all shapes and sizes, and some come with chemical dependencies that are hard to overcome. But people often find that if they approach their addiction consciously, that is, when they actively take part in it and carefully observe what they're doing, that it doesn't have quite the same hold over them that it used to. In that way, mindfulness becomes a powerful tool to help overcome the initial conditions that formed the addiction in the first place. And with mindfulness, you'll also become more acutely aware of the negative side effects some addictions have on your body. Mindfulness and meditation can be used alongside traditional therapies, so I would still encourage you to seek professional help and counseling if you need help overcoming an addiction. There's no need to face it on your own. So, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but when you start to adopt mindfulness, especially, you will see how there's like a little transition where you get a thought in your head that pulls you towards the addiction or whatever it is that you're addicted to. And once you start to separate from the mind and the body, you can literally override those callings, if you might want to call it, the pang, and because you see it for what it is, that it's your mind just hoping that that thing will improve your life. Again, your mind looks to the future to solve problems, and addiction is doing something that you've done over and over again. And it takes you away from the pain and the struggle that you're in right now, but it's almost like ignoring it. The problem doesn't really go away. You should be spending time fixing the problem rather than avoiding it with an addictive behavior. Mindfulness will allow you to see that mechanism, literally see the conversation and the feeling that drags you towards wanting to avoid it rather than wanting to face it. So, in that way, mindfulness and meditation really do give you some very powerful tools to overcome addictions and habits. But again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor, so you have to take these words almost on faith, I suppose, and still seek out traditional methods and therapy if you are really struggling to overcome an addiction and you do see that negative impact it's having on your life. All right, where did we get to? Embarrassment. As you start to lose your fear of being judged, you won't be embarrassed by things nearly as much as you used to. You'll dance like no one is watching. Relationships. Your relationships will blossom because you'll have fewer disagreements. You'll see differences between your lists for what they are, which is simply diversity in personal life experiences. And you'll have compassion for other people because you'll be able to see the things that drive their list. So I'm not just talking about personal relationships on a romantic level, but relationships with everybody that comes into your life, whether that's coworkers or even people that you interact with in the street, in the supermarkets and shops. But all relationships just blossom because you lose that fear. You lose that fear of judgment, and you're not always wondering what other people are thinking about you. And instead, you view them as other human beings that are probably struggling in the same way that you are. They have their own thoughts going through their head. Again, you can really see that when you start talking to your friends and you see the things that they complain about are really just fears. And you can kind of see their internal struggle. It really changes every aspect of personal relationships. Jealousy. Feeling like someone else has the solution to your unhappiness, but now you hold the solution to your own happiness instead. And it doesn't rely on you wanting to be like other people or wanting the things that they have. Frustration. When reality doesn't match your expectations, you feel frustrated. With mindfulness, you'll be able to drop your expectations and will simply be in the present moment permanently. And that's actually very, very powerful. Anxiety. When your mind envisions something you have to do in the future and constantly seems to see potential problems, or more importantly, potential reasons for being judged by others, mindfulness short circuits these thoughts by allowing you to remain firmly in the present moment and not afraid of what others might think. So, one technique that a lot of people use, if you have to go on stage or make a big presentation and you need to just calm yourself down because your mind is starting to spiral, what if this happens? What if that happens? And you just feel this anxiousness and nervousness, just turn to mindfulness and just start to observe your breathing. Literally just watch it again with extreme focus and just concentrate on it. And again, you're telling your mind that you feel safe because you're giving yourself time to do that. So your mind will start to calm down. The more you can focus intently on your breathing, your mind will gradually become silent. Depression. When your mind feels like there's no solution to your situation or the solutions are out of your reach, this is where the negative superpowers are born and depression sets in. Mindfulness allows you to accept your current situation without needing to look to the future. It also allows you to see the source of your unhappiness and evaluate practical solutions without the emotional attachment. Again, I do not want to oversimplify depression. Having someone tell you that it's all in your head doesn't help and just gives you one more thing to complain about. The pain is real, the despair is real, but mindfulness and meditation can help you see the difference between the stories that your mind is telling you and the reality of your situation. So again, with my own awakening, being able to live without a voice in my head for a couple of years was just so liberating and so amazing. There is no anxiety, there is no depression, there is just a natural joy that just seems to exist. Pain relief. Mindfulness is good at reducing the effects of aches and pains, even chronic pain sometimes. Very often, when we're in discomfort, we're listening to our mind complain about how much pain we're in rather than what's actually happening in the body. A lot of people find that by focusing on the minute details of the pain, that it actually disappears entirely. And I had an experience was it almost 2 years ago now, where I dropped something really heavy on my big toe and just crushed the thing. I mean, I'm not even going to describe it for you because it was just so hideous. But my mind was telling me that, oh, something awful has just happened, something really bad. This is really bad news. But by actually focusing on the sensations of the pain, I realized that there actually isn't any pain there. It's literally just a sensation that goes from your toe to your mind. But it's not necessarily good or bad, but it is just a sensation. And if you actually focus on the sensation itself, you realize fairly quickly that it's really not that bad. But when you allow your mind to start jump in and almost imagining the pain, then it gets really bad and really intense. So while I was in the hospital waiting to be taken care of, I found a few moments where my mind would start to jump in and, I wasn't even looking at my toe, but my mind would suddenly start to feel this intense pain and, I thought I was going to lose the toe. And all of a sudden the pain became so intense. I was like, no, 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 let me just, what is actually happening with my toe? And there was very little sensation there. So using mindfulness and focusing in on the pain, you can actually almost eliminate pain completely. Now, if you have, long-term chronic pain, backaches, or things like that, then the other technique you can do, still using mindfulness, is to focus on something other than the pain. So, take your mind away from it completely. If that technique of focusing on it doesn't work, then focus on something else. If you can focus on something that is very physically far away from your body, then that, helps a lot more. So again, two mindfulness techniques that can really help with pain relief. Forgetfulness seems to be more troublesome as we get older. But with your newfound focus, you may be able to get all the way to the kitchen and still remember why you went there in the first place. You might be able to remember where you left your glasses because you were so focused on the sound they made when you placed them on the table or how the shadow changed as you put them under the table lamp. So, focus, concentration, pain relief, an end to procrastination, a silent mind, rising joy. What could possibly get any better than that? Well, this next technique we're going to learn will radically change how you view the world and how your mind reacts to it. So this next technique I want to teach you is something that we hear a lot about, love. We should love other people, love other things. Everybody, well, shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people have posters on their walls that say live, love, laugh, things like that. But there is enormous power in love and truly embodying love. The Bible talks about love all the time. Buddhist scriptures talk about love. And of course, there was the Beatles guy, what's his name? John Lennon. Love is all you need. And it's absolutely true. But if you understand fully what I'm going to tell you next and embody that feeling, you will just radically change your life completely. You won't need to meditate or practice mindfulness. I really did leave the best for last. And this technique is the only thing that you really need to do. But unconditional love sounds a bit weak and wimpy. And so that's kind of why I mentioned meditation and mindfulness, because they seem to be getting a lot more mainstream traction. Unconditional love, I'm sure, will come along at some point. But again, just follow along, and I hope you get a lot out of this section. This, to me, is the most powerful part of the book. And just on a side note, if you're enjoying this reading right now, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to support me personally so I can do more of this, I'd actually love it if you could buy a copy of this. It's available on Amazon. I'll put all the links in the description below. But again, only if you're enjoying it. Maybe buy a copy for a friend, or at least send them a link to this video so that they can get the information without the expense. All right. So, unconditional love. Now, I know there will be some people reading this that might roll their eyes at unconditional love, but trust me, this will give you superpowers, not make you weak or wimpy. And if it makes it easier to digest, think permanent joy or continual happiness instead. But best of all, despite being so powerful, it's really easy to learn and apply to your entire life. When I first started teaching mindfulness and meditation to share my experience, I thought that those two skills allowed you to understand your mind and unlock your inner happiness. And they do, yes. But over time, I realized that practicing unconditional love takes a giant shortcut straight to the finish line. Meditation and mindfulness allow happiness to flourish, but unconditional love generates happiness immediately. Despite meditating twice a day for nearly a decade, I noticed that anger would still sprout quickly and without warning, bubbling up so fast that I couldn't catch it, and responding with a default behavior I learned years earlier. But by practicing unconditional love, I was able to reprogram many of those default responses before they even happened, and make unconditional love my default response to everything. One of the things that happens when you meditate and practice mindfulness is that the stillness starts to follow you throughout the day. You'll become aware of it more and more, but you'll also become aware of some very subtle sensations going on within your own body. We can all feel the difference between love and anger. One is warm and gentle, like being wrapped in a fuzzy blanket. The other is sharp and jagged and causes pain. You'll notice those things more readily, and you will very quickly come to the conclusion that love is the better option. What you're noticing is a chemical change in your body. Love is a state of peace and safety. It creates a healthy environment where your body is healing and thriving. If you could live in this state permanently, I am convinced that all illness and disease would simply disappear. So that's actually a very powerful sentence, and I really didn't realize the power of it when I wrote it. But if you can maintain your body in this state of absolute peace, it is able to fight off, most diseases that attack you. Even autoimmune things just, seem to disappear. You're basically giving your body the best chance it can to fight for itself. Our bodies are tremendous healers. We just need to give them permission and to set the right conditions. And unconditional love does that. It puts your body into this state of absolute peace and bliss all the time. So if you are sitting waiting for the results of a, biopsy or something like that, if your mind is worrying, what is the result going to be? You're filling your body with all of these chemicals and hormones that that really don't help you. But if you can at the same time fill yourself with peace and love instead, then you're giving your body the best chance it can to fight any disease on its own. And if you're going through chemotherapy or something like that, then you're just giving yourself that extra advantage. So, again, a very powerful sentence that I really didn't quite appreciate how powerful that was when I wrote it. On the other hand, fear and anger trigger the fight or flight response, which shuts down a lot of your organs in preparation to avoid a threat. But these chemicals that help you escape an encounter with a bear cause real harm to your body. And when you're angry, unhappy, worrying, or complaining, you also release small amounts of these harmful chemicals. They cause tension in the muscles, elevated heart rate and blood pressure, changes in the glucose level in order to feed your hungry brain, and dramatically reduce your ability to process food. They shorten your life and are just plain bad for you. Anger creates such a strong chemical response in your body that you feel the dramatic effects. It's very easy to spot, but realize that you're the only one that suffers from that shot of adrenaline you just gave yourself, not the person you're angry at. And if you've understood what I've been talking about so far, you'll realize that if our mind is constantly criticizing others or defending itself, then it is constantly anticipating danger, therefore, constantly releasing a small but steady trickle of those harmful chemicals. Again, this is so subconscious. You don't walk around terrified of the world, fearing everything, but your mind is wary of others and is always looking for danger on your behalf. We've all heard that stress kills, and it's those harmful hormones that get injected into your body when your mind is perceiving a threat. And again, it's not like, you walk around the corner and you see a tiger and you get like a mega shot of adrenaline. But each time you perceive somebody judging you, you're on your back foot and your mind is preparing arguments and conversations to have with them. While ever you hear that voice in your head, you are releasing a tiny amount of adrenaline. And actually, you'll notice that sometimes when you meditate, when you enter an incredibly peaceful state, you'll notice the tiniest amount of change in your chemistry. And if you can silence your mind completely, you'll actually notice when your mind does talk that you notice a change. So even a small conversation in your mind does actually produce a bit of a fearful response in your body. Again, you may not recognize it as fear, but that is literally what it is. Your mind is preparing a defense just on the off chance that something might happen and you get into a real encounter with somebody. I mean, let's face it, encounters with other people start in childhood, at school. We get into disagreements and arguments. People get in your face. And I don't remember the last time I was attacked by a bear or a tiger or something that I really need those chemicals for. But throughout my entire life, I've had encounters with people that, made me defensive. They made my mind fear other minds and go around the world talking to itself. So again, that's just my 2 cents from a non-psychologist. So if this trickle of harmful chemicals is so bad for us, how do we stimulate the healthy chemistry within our bodies, and how do we keep it going 24 hours a day? It turns out it's quite simple, actually. When you use your mind to visualize something, your body will, to a certain degree, respond to those thoughts. We're all familiar with what happens when you visualize eating a lemon and your mouth suddenly starts to produce saliva. Similarly, if you close your eyes and visualize riding a roller coaster and making a really sharp turn, your muscles will start to tense up to counter the imaginary G force. It might be quite subtle, but try it and you'll see. Now, if you go back and visualize a confrontation you had in the past, you may feel your chemistry changing. You'll feel a bit of an uneasy feeling in your stomach. Maybe you'll feel your heart start to thump or your palms get sweaty. The more detail you put into your visualization, the more your body responds. So I think we've probably all had that experience driving as well, where somebody cut you up in such an aggressive way that you got kind of a horrible shot of adrenaline. You were probably yelling and screaming at the guy. And then you may even remember the encounter later if it was so bad, and you get almost the same feeling again. And the more that you re encounter that same situation in your mind, you feel the physical effects in your body. So the more that you relive that experience, the more you're poisoning yourself with those harmful chemicals. This is kind of the nature of PTSD as well, that you keep reliving that experience and giving yourself that horrible shot again. So, we're going to use our mind like a tool and exploit this powerful phenomena in a good and healthy way. We're going to use a positive visualization to release feel good hormones throughout our body. Just like when we learned mindfulness, we're going to start small and build up slowly until it becomes your new way of interacting with the world. For this to work, we need to build an image of something that we know we love unconditionally. Something that, whenever we see it, it fills us with joy. It can be a loved one, a close friend, or a cute, adorable puppy. It can even be an experience, not necessarily something tangible. Maybe a vacation memory or some activity you did that really made you feel great. If you have to, you can even make something up if there's nothing from your own personal experience that will elicit a loving, joyful response. But decide ahead of time what this vision is going to be. We can even call it our happy place. Now that you've decided what you're going to use as your positive image, your happy place of unconditional love, we'll need to prepare our environment in much the same way that we did for meditation and remove as many distractions as possible. It's less important than for meditation, but nonetheless, we need to be able to focus on our vision without our attention being grabbed unnecessarily. Sit comfortably in a quiet room and gently close your eyes. Slowly start to build the vision in your mind. Try to pull in as much detail as possible: sight, sound, smells, touch, etc. The more real you make it, the more your body will respond. Just stay in that moment for a while, enjoying and savoring it. Let it wash over your body and try to let the warm, loving feelings grow stronger. It can sometimes be a little emotional as you start to get in touch with your heart, but that's okay. That's all part of the healing process. When you start to feel a joy rising through your body, use your mindfulness skills to really study this wonderful feeling. Look within yourself to see how each cell within your body feels. Spend some time in the experience until you get used to how your body feels when it's in this state. There's no tension, everything is relaxed and at peace. Your body feels light, and there seems to be a gentle flow. It has a tangible, effervescent quality to it. Endorphins and other feel good hormones do that. The next step is to open your eyes and slowly look around the room. Each object your eyes settle on, try to maintain that same loving feeling. Do it again and again. If it fades, close your eyes and rebuild your vision until the feeling comes back. I recommend doing this practice for just 10 minutes in the evening to build the habit. But once you can look around your entire room and just feel that intense love for everything, get up and walk from room to room, taking that feeling with you and falling in love with everything you come across. Pretty soon, you won't even need to do your visualization anymore. You will literally be able to turn the joy on and off like flicking a light switch. But in order to fully incorporate it into your everyday life, you have to seek out things you wouldn't normally like, things you might normally criticize or complain about, and then try to feel that healthy feeling again. Look at a piece of trash and feel pure love. Do the laundry and feel pure love. Look at someone you don't like and feel pure love towards them. And the most important one of all, and the one we often overlook, look at yourself in the mirror and feel pure love. If you do that, you'll notice that your mind once again goes silent. How can it criticize or become unhappy about something when you are literally feeling pure love for everything? You just took control over your emotions and you short circuited your mind. It doesn't have to judge anything. And that is the essence of unconditional love in a nutshell. If you go around Feeling love towards everything, your mind doesn't need to judge. And once it stops judging, it goes silent. That voice in your head will literally just disappear. All you have to do is feel love towards everything. And that's the skill that takes a little bit of time. But I find it's easier than mindfulness and meditation. And you only need to practice just a little bit each time, each day, and you'll get good at it pretty quickly. And so you can experience a silent mind very, very quickly. And again, you fill your body with these wonderful endorphins and other feel good hormones that just let your body heal itself and thrive. All right, let's get back to the book. Inanimate objects are relatively easy, but it is definitely a little more tricky dealing with other people. Remember, our mind is naturally wary of other minds, but you can even reprogram this behavior by walking down the high street and revisiting your happy place with each stranger you pass. But in order to build the habit, you have to go out with the sole intention of practicing, making it a deliberate task. Otherwise, you'll get sidetracked and forget. You'll soon notice that while you're in this state, you don't get conversations in your head criticizing their appearance, comparing your status with theirs, wondering what they think of you. What you'll feel instead is an intense joy within, and what you will see everywhere you look is love. Learning to do this does take a little time for it to become your default response to every situation, but it's much quicker than meditating, which can take decades or even lifetimes to get to this same endpoint. And just to emphasize, it's the feeling of love you're interested in, not thoughts or notions running through your head about love. I can tell someone I love them without actually feeling love internally, but it's the chemical component of love, that tangible, effervescent tingle we feel inside, that's important and the whole point of this exercise. I can look around my living room and feel the same intense feeling of love for my couch cushions as though I was staring into the eyes of my wife. It's that wonderful, and it's that powerful, and it's also that simple. So, going hand in hand with this as well, I don't walk around the world saying, I love you, man, to everyone I meet. But my wife will tell you I don't tell her that I love her often enough, but she knows I love her because when we sit down, even if we're watching a TV show together, I look at her and she knows that there is love there. You don't have to say it out loud. It isn't an exchange of words, it's an exchange of emotion and feelings. When you love things unconditionally, the world notices and reflects that back to you. Use this skill whenever you find resistance in your life. If you catch yourself saying you don't want to do something, recognize your mind is trying to avoid something that might be difficult or uncomfortable, and instead, turn on the love and see if the resistance is still there. Whenever you start to hear a negative conversation in your head, just turn on the love. You are essentially dismantling all the rules and barriers you created in your list that hold you back and make you afraid. And quite possibly the best part about this is that nobody knows you're doing it. You don't walk around saying, I love you, man, and handing out roses to everyone you see. But inside, you feel this intense joy at the world, which makes you immune to anything that life can throw at you. So, in that regard, practicing unconditional love is perhaps the most selfish thing you can do because you're the one that reaps all of the benefits from all those endorphins. Nothing else changes. It's all internal. And again, another key point, doesn't matter whether you feel happy or sad, angry, whatever emotion you have inside does not change the world around you. So you may as well choose love and peace because you're the only one that feels any emotions that you generate within yourself. How your mind reacts to the world around you generally triggers emotions that have a physical effect on your body. So, by short circuiting your mind and feeling unconditional love or just feeling love towards everything, literally short circuits your mind and just basically predetermines that I am going to respond to every situation with love. And again, it doesn't change the outside world one little bit. Somebody will still cut you off. Somebody might get in your face and yell and scream at you. But how you feel on the inside does not change that encounter. But you will find that the world does start to change around you. It's like the world starts to reflect that love back at you. You'll quickly realize that for most of your life, it was your mind that made you unhappy, simply because it thought things should have been different. It judged your situation and thought there was supposed to be something better. So again, I got the noisy train in the background. And again, I can respond to that train with love. I could get angry and say, oh my God, it's spoiling my recording here. I'm trying to read this book. And the train is disrupting me. And I could be all angry and filling myself with these terrible chemicals, but it doesn't change the train. It doesn't change the environment out there. I may as well respond with love and just feel all of the benefits of that. Again, I love that train. I love the fact that it's blowing its horn like that. All right, but I think it's done, so let's get back to the book. You'll quickly realize that for most of your life, it was your mind that made you unhappy, simply because it thought things should be different. It judged your situation and thought there was supposed to be something better. But by having that thought, it unintentionally made you unhappy with what you had. Meditation releases the built up stress from your body and lets that tension go. Mindfulness prevents the stress from building in the first place. Meditation allows you to observe and understand your mind. It allows you to regain your focus and concentration. Mindfulness further strengthens that focus and forces you to remain present in the physical world rather than getting wrapped up in the stories in your head. Unconditional love automatically shuts down that part of your mind that judges and compares everything. It's like you make a decision one time and your mind no longer has to judge and compare because it already knows how you want to respond. That alone cuts out almost all of the conversations in your head. Like all self improvement, it requires you to do some work and commit to doing it every day. It won't happen overnight, but if you do these three things every day and take them seriously, I guarantee your life, health, relationships, your outlook, and your happiness will all change for the better. And understanding what your mind is doing when it talks to you will give you the motivation to want to do the work to silence your mind and be happy. These are not usually quick fixes, but a steady progression. Even feeling a tiny bit happier every day will make a big difference over the rest of your life. If you're feeling depressed or suicidal, I still recommend talking to a traditional mental health professional or counselor. Sometimes there are physiological issues on top of all the burdens that life throws at us. And if you only want to learn one new skill, then do the unconditional love option. It offers the biggest bang for the buck. And if even that seems like too much effort, then simply notice that every time you complain about something, get upset by something, or get angry at something, that there's an underlying notion that things should be different. And just replace should with could. By stopping your mind from talking and choosing to let those healthy hormones flood your body instead, you will experience a great inner peace and will find that a natural joy seems to arise out of thin air. Your health will flourish and you'll view the world in a whole new way. And if everything I've written sounds like hard work or maybe doesn't make sense, then the simplest form of mental reset I can suggest is turn off the TV, put down your phone, and go for a slow and gentle walk in nature, away from all the man made stuff that clutters our lives and fills our minds with more wants and desires. Happiness is a choice, so stop thinking and choose to be happy. So that is all of the material that I have that is going to change and revolutionize your life. But just the way that minds work, I know that you may still have questions or even be putting some objections like my mind doesn't do that. So there is this inevitable resistance to the techniques that I'm prescribing here. So, of course, there's a chapter in the book that talks about the inevitable resistance. There are some common arguments that people put forward as their mind wrestles with the changes I've outlined. I talk a lot about negativity and unhappiness in this book. Those conversations are just much easier to spot in the mind because they invite negative emotions within the body. We tend to notice the struggles more than we do the happy moments because our mind is a fear based survival computer that's designed to look for problems, not look for happiness. Again, I just want to restate that. Your mind is a fear based survival computer that's designed to look for problems, not look for happiness. But even compliments or positive sounding dialogues are driven by the same fear based mechanism. It just sounds better and less harmful, so we don't notice it as a problem. But even complimenting something is still a judgment. Only your mind is looking for affirmation that your list is correct. So even though it doesn't feel like it, it's still driven by the same fear of judgment. Some of you will be quick to point out that when you get something you want, it makes you happy. But actually, that's not true. When you get something you want, you stop wanting, and all of a sudden, you notice the happiness that was always there. But the problem is, it doesn't take long before you start wanting the next thing. It's a vicious cycle. It's a pretty subtle distinction, but if you look closely, you'll see it's true. Look at all the things you wanted throughout your life that promised to make you happy. You got them, but how long did the happiness last? Every basement or garage in America is full of things that promise to make us happy. Just look. Now that leads us to the next argument. If everything is perfect the way it is, and wanting things makes me unhappy, then where is the motivation to want to improve my life? If I'm starving, I need food, so I want food. But that doesn't mean I have to be unhappy while I'm trying to find food. And it doesn't mean I should be unhappy until I find food. Accepting everything as perfect and loving everything does not preclude action. If you want a bigger house and it's not just a want because you've seen it on TV, then you can still take action towards that, but you shouldn't be unhappy until you can actually buy that bigger house. So you can still strive for bigger, better, faster, greater. You may find once you meditate for a while that you actually don't want those things anymore. But if you're still in that stage of your life where you still want those greater things and you want a different life and you want to make improvements, you can still do them, but be happy while you're doing them. But again, once you transition into that state of loving everything, you may find that you don't want them. You realize you don't need them. You don't need them for happiness. All right. So that's a distinction that maybe wasn't quite so clear in the book. When you stop the mind complaining, you'll find that solutions to problems just happen without any effort. You remove the story and you remove the struggle. If I can't afford my mortgage, I can either earn more money or I can sell my house. But if you're attached to the house emotionally, or if you're embarrassed you can't pay your mortgage, then those decisions will be incredibly difficult and cause your mind to thrash around, worry, and struggle. But Matt, I have real problems you just don't understand. Believe it or not, when you spend time with a silent mind, you'll realize that there's no difference between somebody who is starving and struggling to find food compared to somebody who's upset that their $100 steak isn't cooked properly. From the outside, they seem like very different problems. One seems much more serious and life threatening, but from the inside, your mind views them as the same. So silencing the mind removes the drama and the struggle, and happiness is the result. But it doesn't prevent you from seeking a solution. If you're starving, you still have to go out and find food, and you can still request another steak. But you can do both of those things without a story in your head or without being unhappy. This might not make sense until you've spent some time observing your mind for yourself. So for now, you might just have to take my word for it. But just realize that being unhappy does not change the physical situation one little bit. So choose to be happy instead. What motivates you to get out of bed in the morning if everything is perfect? You will actually find that once you start to see the world without your mind judging everything, that your motivations will change drastically. You will not struggle to find your life's purpose, but you will also not struggle with your current situation either. The world takes on a dazzling new look, and even things you've seen a million times before are as amazing as the best sunset. You will be excited to leap out of bed in the morning to see what the world has to offer. You won't be afraid of anything, and you won't want to miss anything either. You'll find that you won't be motivated to chase money or lifestyles, but instead, you'll be motivated to explore things that interest you, which means interesting jobs, interesting hobbies, interesting people, interesting lifestyles, but not in a wanting kind of way, in a childlike curiosity kind of way. Your fascination with the world will drive your decisions, not what you've seen on YouTube or TikTok, but what you'll find is that happiness will emerge spontaneously, and you will have all the things that you need for a happy life. You'll also find that opportunities just seem to land in your lap. The hard part is spotting them. Some of you will no doubt agree with what I've written, in which case you probably had conversations in your head like, wow, this guy is spot on. I must remember to tell my friend. But if you disagreed with me, you probably had conversations in your head confronting me and challenging my theory. Yeah, but I don't have a list of wants and desires in my head. My mind doesn't do that. But either way, you prove my theory by having those conversations in your head. They serve no purpose and simply highlight the similarities or differences between our two lists of life experiences. Here's a simple thought experiment to see if you've struggled enough and you're really ready to be happy. If I asked you, would you rather be sad or would you rather be happy? You would answer happy without any hesitation. The same with if I said, angry, depressed, lonely, annoyed, or happy. You would say happy without a moment's thought. However, if I asked, would you rather be rich or would you rather be happy? Would you rather have a big house with a Lamborghini and a pool, or would you rather be happy? Would you rather be popular or would you rather be happy? While ever you think that having money, fame, or stuff will solve all your problems and make you happy, then you're missing the point. You're choosing something else over happiness, and you will literally chase that thing in the belief that it will make you happy. Having money may make things easier in some ways. You won't struggle in the same way that a poor person would. You can simply keep resetting the wanting by buying more stuff. But that's only temporary and isn't true happiness. Over the course of the pandemic, the three richest people on the planet all got divorced or separated from their partners because they felt that things could be better. Money wasn't enough for them to find happiness in their relationship. So, right there in the newspaper headlines is the perfect example that money does not buy happiness. As soon as you realize that and stop chasing money and possessions in the hopes they will make you happy, then all of your struggles will be over. True happiness will spontaneously arise. I talk about the mind as though it's a separate entity. We can go back to a very familiar model of a mind, body, and spirit. I have a mind, but I am not my mind. I have a body, but I am not my body. I'm the thing that observes those two and is aware that I have them. When you meditate, sometimes you will experience detachment from your body, just like you're observing your body operate autonomously. Sometimes you will detach from the mind and observe it operating autonomously too. The bigger picture of consciousness is well beyond the scope of this little workbook, but if you practice the things I've outlined, you will definitely get an uncanny sense that you are more than just your body and that your mind is a companion rather than who you are. We're just not used to looking at it that way. I can exercise my body in a gym and I can do crossword puzzles to keep my mind strong, but how do I exercise my spirit? Without a constant reminder, we forget. What if I don't have time to meditate or practice this stuff? That's why I'm stressed out in the first place. Meditation is as restful as sleep, so you can wake up 20 minutes earlier and meditate for 20 minutes without missing a beat. But once you drop the negativity from your life, you will also gain more energy. You'll be healthier and literally won't need as much sleep. If you suffer from insomnia and struggle to fall asleep, then meditating before bed will really help settle your mind. And if you're still not convinced, then meditate for just 1 minute. That's not too difficult to add to even the busiest lifestyle. Mindfulness and unconditional love can be practiced anytime and anywhere. Sitting in traffic or at a red light is a wonderful place to practice these skills and incorporate them into your busy life. So you have no excuses. You should meditate every day, practice mindfulness every day, and obviously practice unconditional love. If I just accept things the way they are, won't I appear weak? And people will just take advantage of me knowing that I won't complain. Well, think about this. Would you jump off a cliff today if somebody asked you to? Of course not. Then why would you jump off a cliff tomorrow just because you're filled with joy? You won't appear weak because nobody will be able to play with your emotions the way they do now. Without an ego, there's nothing to get bent out of shape or defensive about. You will be confident without being arrogant and compassionate without being condescending. It's a powerful combination, not weakness. Nobody's going to be able to take advantage of you. Trust me. If I want my mind to be silent, isn't that just more wanting and desire? Yes, but therein lies the difficulty with enlightenment, dropping that final desire, wanting to be enlightened. Right now, we're just using practical steps to understand what your mind is doing so that you can move towards genuine happiness. These practical steps allow you to start noticing your mind and silencing as many of the conversations as possible. This is a practical approach that can be applied to everyday life without any spiritual significance. For now, just take baby steps towards wanting a silent mind, and then when you're near the finish line, wanting to drop wanting is just one more final step. So I was incredibly fortunate to have all of this just reveal itself to me without putting any effort in. And I feel really bad telling you guys that you have to do these tasks and learn these techniques to get to that silent mind. But trust me, it is worth doing the work. I really wish that I could just step up to people and maybe touch them on the forehead and have them experience what I did because it would change the world instantly. Um, so again, I do feel kind of bad, like feel like a bit of a dick really for saying that it's so amazing, it's wonderful. I'm filled with this bliss and joy. But trust me, if you follow the techniques and stick to them, you will actually get to that point yourself. It is so revolutionary, it's so amazing, and it's so easy to do. But I just wanted to leave you with a few words of inspiration. And this chapter is called A Few Words of Inspiration. It's hard to believe that three simple processes that have evolved to keep us alive cause so much unhappiness, stress, and drama in so many people's lives. Our minds are still functioning perfectly well, but the only problem is that they're operating in an environment for which they were never designed. Flippers are perfect for snorkeling, but they make lousy dance shoes. Our mind is no different and is constantly tripping itself up. If the airbags in your car kept going off every time you drove past a person on the sidewalk, you would take it to the mechanic to get it fixed right away. The conversations in your head that are simply meant to protect you are no different. They're intended to keep you safe from danger. Their design and purpose is flawless, but they're just being set off for all the wrong reasons. Our minds have become so strong compared to our ancestors, but we have somehow lost sight of their purpose and ultimately lost control. The list of objects and experiences we need to keep track of today is so vast that each time you turn your head, or each time the scene changes in the movie you're watching, your mind has to identify each object looking for threats. It's so subconscious, You don't notice it, but it means that your mind is always on, always looking for danger, and if it's always looking for problems, it will somehow manage to find them. So much of what we see in the world is better than what we currently have. Our primitive mind that is looking for ways to improve our chances of survival will naturally want things that are better, but having a Ferrari will not improve my chances of survival, nor will having a bigger house. But because I've been exposed to those better things through TV and the internet, my mind will subconsciously want them and make me less happy with my inferior stuff. Our minds have also become incredibly strong because of the constant stream of micro decisions we need to make moment by moment. These decisions are driven by the sheer volume and abundance of choice we have in our convenient modern world. Henry Ford had it right when he said, "You can have any color you want as long as it's black." For many people, decision making is paralyzing. Shopping online in your pajamas is convenient, but at what price to your mental health? How can there possibly be over 10,000 screwdrivers to choose from on Amazon? How do I know I'm buying the right one? But it's our subconscious fear of being judged that causes an almost constant stream of unnecessary conversations to run through our head. You may not recognize it as fear, but listen to the conversations. Write them down if need be so you can realize why you're judging others, defending your actions, or explaining to an imaginary person why you're doing something the way you're doing it. Silencing your mind completely takes a lot of practice and patience, but simply starting to observe the conversations in your head and understand what they really mean brings about a tremendous change within you. And even quieting your mind just a little bit each day will allow you to get glimpses of true happiness that will have a huge positive impact on your health and well being. Use meditation to release all the built up stress from the day, but also use it to realize that you can't simply silence your mind like turning off a light switch. Notice how it seems to operate automatically and that you have no control over it. Start to pay attention to the stories it tells you and try to understand where they come from. You'll reveal lots of past experiences that lead you to respond automatically and very predictably today. Once you start to notice that, you can start to change. Use mindfulness to slowly move your focus away from your mind and back into the physical world. Remain present with what you're doing instead of being dragged into a story. Observe how actions in the external world cause reactions in the mind, and notice how reactions in your mind cause physical changes in your body. Once you start to see how your mind controls your body, you can start to change. Use unconditional love to tell your mind that there is nothing that needs judging, nothing that needs criticizing, nothing that is threatening, nothing that you want, and nothing that will improve your chances of survival. See how that one action that you can control transforms your mind from being the one in charge to being a useful tool that you can use when you need it. Once you start to experience that, you can regain control, and the love that you see in the external world will be felt in every single cell in your body. Happiness is a choice we can make, but in order to make that choice, we have to recognize that our mind is running an outdated program to keep us safe. It is constantly on the lookout for dangers and threats, and our modern world seems to fool this simple mechanism into thinking that everything is a danger and everything is a problem that needs solving. Any work towards self improvement is hard, and you may never completely silence your mind fully, but I encourage you to be brave and give it a try. There really is nothing to lose other than that annoying voice in your head, but so much to gain. You cannot control the world around you or how other people act towards you, but you do have full control over how you react to the world and how you respond to other people. If somebody cuts you off on the highway or says something mean to your face, you have no control over that. But how you react on the inside, you can control fully. If you allow someone else's actions to ruin your day, then who is actually ruining your day? How does the conversation in your head change what happened? How does the conversation in your head change the other person's behavior? And who is the one suffering the harmful health consequences of the prolonged exposure to the negativity? You'll undoubtedly be excited to share your new skills with the world, but be careful about telling other people what to do. You're essentially attacking their list and telling them that what they're doing is wrong. But by changing yourself and how you respond to the world, you'll find that you do have a strong influence on the people that come into your life. People will notice because your reactions will be so unexpected and conscious. In order to take back control and help the evolution of the human mind and the evolution of our society, we have to deliberately override the default programming of our ancestors and replace it with something much more appropriate for our time, something much better. Acknowledge that the way your list is organized is based on your unique personal experiences and upbringing. Somebody else may do things differently to how you would do them, but is it necessarily bad or wrong? Slow down and find the joy in the tiny details, and you'll become mesmerized with how beautiful the world is. When you're listening to your mind, you're missing out on that experience. Spend time in nature away from all the man made stuff, and you'll see how your mind slows down to a much more relaxed pace. If you are persistent and manage to achieve a silent mind, or even a quieter mind, you might notice that something quite magical happens when you eliminate all those unnecessary thoughts that run through your head. When your mind becomes free from the burden of repetitive pre programmed thoughts, you will start to receive original, creative ideas sparked by your renewed awareness of the present. Inquisitive thoughts, new ideas and unique solutions, alternative perspectives, or unexpected insights all just seem to come to the forefront when you remove the clutter of unnecessary self talk. When you stop complaining about your neighbor's lawn, that's when the epiphanies and eureka moments occur that can really change your life. The work is worth it because you are worth it. Love everything and everybody. Be kind to each other, be kind to yourself, and be happy. Okay, thank you so much for listening. The rest of the book, I have worksheets in there and suggested daily routines. There's also some bonus meditations that I put in the back of the book. And like I said before, I am actually working on expanding this into another much larger book with all of the insights that I have received since writing this book. And again, if you want to help support me with this effort, I'd love it if you could just buy your own copy of this. It's available on Amazon. It's currently $7.99, although I don't know how much that's going to be 10 years from now or 20 years from now when you watch this video. But it's currently available for $7.99. Buy a copy for yourself to help support me with this endeavor, or possibly buy some for friends, relatives, people you think might be struggling with life and might need to hear this message. And if you can't afford to purchase a copy, then send your friends the link to this video. The information is still there. It will still help them. But again, my name is Matt Robinson, the Gregarious Hermit. You can find a lot more information on my website, thegregarioushermit.com. Thank you so much for listening. And remember to love everything and love everybody. You will reap such tremendous rewards and feel such peace from doing it. It's not going to make you weak or wimpy. People won't take advantage of you. This information won't prevent you from looking for solutions to improve your life. Again, if you're hungry, you can still look for food, but you can still be happy while you do that. But also bear in mind that seeking that Ferrari to bring you happiness, chances are it'll probably only make you happy for a little while, and then you'll want a Lamborghini or two Ferraris or a bigger Ferrari, a faster Ferrari. So again, that is not true happiness. True happiness really does come from within, and the path to that is very simple. Love everything and love everybody.